This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
I really like where our guys are in this process of development and how they're approaching their day, overall their mindset and just the intentionality to their work. That's been the key to all of this. And this is why I do believe it's sustainable, because of the way they're going about it. They're going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to execute at a higher level. So we're in a really good spot.
That was Ollie Marmol coming off of the series against the Tigers. Cardinals only win 1 out of 3, but they had every opportunity to win on Tuesday night against Tarek Skubal. Certainly pushed him. And ultimately, you come out of that series thinking to yourself, at least for me, T-Bone, Cardinals are in a pretty good spot right now. I don't feel any worse about them. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. I basically feel the same today that I did going into the series against Kansas City. Nothing has really tangibly changed for me. And they've got an awesome test coming up over really the next 9 games. I like breaking down the season into segments. And I think like the last 9 games were about how do you size up against teams that made the playoffs a year ago that are expected to do so once again this season. And the Cardinals were right there against all of them. Won the series against Philly, won the series against KC, and then we're right there with Detroit, the best team in the league so far this season. The next 9 games, T-Bone, to me, very easy to explain as well. Teams that came into the season with playoff expectations, not hopes, expectations based on the moves that they had made or where the team is at in its life cycle. And none of them have necessarily lived up to that hype. Arizona is a good team, but they have fallen short of their expectations. Baltimore is supposed to be a good team, and they suck. And Texas, again, supposed to be a good team. They came into the season and were so bad offensively that they fired their hitting coach after a month. So these next 3 opponents that you're going up against have certainly not lived up to expectations. And the question going into these series, if you're looking at it through like a national lens, is what's going to be more real? Is it the Cardinals' start to the season through the first 50 games where they look like a playoff contender? Or is it these other teams that came into the season with real expectations, which is the opposite of the Cardinals, that have not lived up to those expectations, and they'll just continue kind of drifting away, and we won't think about them much up until mid-July when maybe they become sellers. T-Bone, for you, especially going into this series against Arizona, what's the top storyline for you?
Well, I think the top storyline for this Arizona series is going to be what does the Cardinals pitching staff look like against the great offense? Look, though the Diamondbacks have kind of disappointed so far this year, it's not been because their offense is a beast. They are top 5 in just about every statistical category. They can mash with the best of them. And with a team that we've talked about, we've spent really the last week talking about of, hey, can this whole pitch to contact approach work continuously throughout the season? Will your defense be able to make the plays that matter? Well, it's going to be tested this weekend because the Diamondbacks offense is going to be putting the ball in play. So that's the thing I'm going to be looking towards. And then can you take advantage of this pitching that is down for Arizona right now? I can't explain it, okay, because I love their rotation. If you said build a dream T-Bone rotation, I would just point at the Arizona Diamondbacks of Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen, Brandon Pfaadt, Corbin Burns, Eduardo Rodriguez. That's my starting 5. I'm all in on it. But their bullpen's been disappointing, and we took a deep dive into it today in our pre-show meeting.
I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't add up.
Yeah.
I think it's fake. I see what the ERA number says. I don't believe you, ERA. I don't believe you.
It's hard to explain. So, like, my thing for this series especially is, okay, can your pitching continue to pitch to contact and beat the Arizona Diamondbacks offense? And then for the offense, okay, well, do what you've been doing, right? You're going to see some pretty good arms in this series. Zach Gallen pitches tonight. He's been struggling. In other words, just a continuation of what the season has been. 16 of your 50 games have been against studs. Zach Gallen is kind of going through his version of the Aaron Nola season right now. You know what the Cardinals did to Aaron Nola? They beat the hell out of him. Can you continue to do that tonight against Zach Gallen? And can you continue to just do enough as an offense while you go up against such a great starting rotation?
It should be a fun weekend, man. This is a hell of a team that you're going up against. I know the record isn't all that flashy. They're only 2 games above 500. They're a mirror image of you in that regard. But, man, this is a good team with really high-level talent. Ketel Marte, prior to going on the IL, was an MVP candidate. Like, that dude was playing out of his mind. Corbin Carroll is an MVP candidate, just like flat out. The dude's batting .300, and so far this season, again, they've played about 50 games this year, 9 doubles, 6 triples, and 15 home runs. Okay, good luck with that, good friend. You remember Eugenio Suarez?
Yeah.
Think he once hit, was he the one that hit 3 home runs against the Cardinals?
Yeah, with Cincinnati, I believe.
He's just been doing that, basically. He doesn't hit for average. He doesn't get on base, but he hits a boatload of home runs.
When he makes contact, it goes far.
Yeah. Big man, hit ball hard, basically is his situation. Geraldo Perdomo is one of the more exciting young players in baseball this year. He's batting .300. He's slugging .500. And, oh, by the way, he plays Gold Glove defense at the most important position in baseball. So they've got some studs. Gabriel Moreno, who we saw a couple of years ago in the playoffs. I love watching him play. Just a really good young catcher. They've got a lot of Josh Naylor. They got him this offseason, and suddenly he's stealing bases like he's Victor Scott. Like, what? I don't know if you guys are familiar with Josh Naylor's game, but the man is 240 pounds and he's 5'10", and he has so far this season 9 stolen bases. I don't understand. Feels like that doesn't compute for me, but just a good baseball team that's going to be coming into town. And so this gets us to our next conversation. Katie Wu had a piece earlier today over in The Athletic, T-Bone. It's titled the following: with attendance down, Cardinals commit to improving the Busch Stadium experience. Now, there wasn't anything in here, in my opinion, that you're not familiar with, right? They have the right field experience that the
Budweiser Terrace.
Yeah, the $5 beer, $5 hot dogs, and $6 margaritas during the game. They've got the DJ up there. They're planning some of these like summer concert series that are going to be taking place after individual games. Like all of that stuff, all fair and well. But really, the story is attendance is down in a meaningful way, and the Cardinals are aware of it. They expected it. It is basically right in line with what they had previously projected. I am really interested to see what the attendance looks like this weekend. Now, Bill DeWitt III says in this story about 70% of the tickets that they know they're going to be sold this year, they're already sold. Those are tickets that are already out there, and then the rest is just like single-day purchases. When we went to the game earlier this week, T-Bone, I was actually kind of impressed by the crowd against the Tigers when Tarek Skubal was on the mound. It's about 30,000, so it wasn't a sellout by any stretch, but it was a pretty good crowd. People were lively. They were into the game. They certainly gave them a fun game to watch. What are you anticipating this weekend, especially tonight, Friday night? A lot of people going to have this extended weekend for many kids. School is over now. What are you anticipating attendance-wise this weekend, T-Bone?
Yeah, I think you'll see a slight bump up, and I think it'll be kind of like you described that Tuesday game that we were at with Detroit, where it'll be about 31 to 35. I think you're going to start to see a slight uptick because, one, you've got a fun, exciting team in Arizona that's coming to town. The Cardinals are playing good baseball. To your point, extended weekend. I don't know about the weekend specifically because there is some rain in the forecast potentially, so that might draw some people away. Really, the game I'm honing in on is tonight. Is tonight going to be a sign of potentially of things to come for the Cardinals, of potentially starting to draw people back in? I don't think they're jumping up to a sellout. I don't think they've earned that trust. But I do think you'll start to see that trickle of, okay, maybe 31 to 33, maybe 35 is like my high end I'd go at today. I do think we'll see attendance start to boost up a little bit since they're playing good baseball.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat is available for you always at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. And today I would like to hear from you via the mic drop feature. Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature is on the 101 ESPN app. I asked this on Twitter today, put out a poll, and I would be curious your thoughts on it. Are you more likely to attend a Cardinals game today than you would have been on opening day? That's it. Simple question. Could be based on anything. Could be based on the team that you're watching. Could be based on your own personal feelings. Whatever it is. 80% of the votes thus far say yes. They would be more likely to attend a game today than they would have been on opening day. I think that's reasonable. That feels about right to me. Certainly that vibe is represented on our show where people, I think, are more excited to watch Cardinals baseball on a night in, night out basis. I also asked a follow-up question, also a poll over on Twitter. If you're still not interested in attending a game, which of these is the primary reasons that you don't plan to go, that you don't want to attend a Cardinals game? Cost, team performance, ownership /Mosaic, or the downtown experience? Which of those four, and I think that there are others that could be out there as well, but those four I think are the primary reasons that we typically hear as to why people aren't going to games. Which of those most represents your current situation? I would be curious your answers on that. You can either vote over on Twitter at BK Sports Talk or send in your Scott Lee heating mic drop. Would like to hear on those throughout the day today. Coming up in 15 minutes, I can no longer be rational about Sam Bennett. After watching him last night, I can't be contained, T-Bone. This is not my fault. It is Sam Bennett's fault. I blame him, not me. So we'll talk about that in 15 minutes. But next, the Cardinals are finally operating with some transparency. This has been one of the main, I would say, gripes that Cardinals fans have had about this team, comparing them to the St. Louis Blues, despite both of them going through similar situations. The Blues operate with transparency. The Cardinals are very much cloak and dagger. I think that might be shifting. We'll explain it next year on 101 ESPN.
You can now listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature over there. Throughout the day today, we'll take some of your texts, your mic drops, on whether or not you're more likely to go to the Cardinals games now based on the way that the team has been playing, the way that they are representing themselves. They certainly have earned more fan support, but I do understand there is more than just one season that's leading to the lack of fan support. This is a really 6 years, I would say, downward spiral based on the trajectory of the team. We got this text, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 573. I want to support the Cardinals this year, but I can't until Mo apologizes for all of his BS. So there is that. We also got this from the 314. Guys, my girlfriend and I are going to the game on Sunday. Before the season, she wanted nothing to do with going to the games, but we're both excited to go this weekend. So I guess you have both perspectives represented on our text line right now.
We're open for business.
Yeah, that's right, Mo. We are open for business. That'd be real quick, by the way. It will never happen. It would be awesome if Mo, at his last end of season presser, just ran through an apology list. Yeah, sorry I traded Randy Arozarena for Matthew Liberatore. Mm-hmm. Sorry I traded Zach Gallen and Sandy Alcantara. I'll admit that one was a mistake. We acquired Ozuna, who climbed a wall and dropped the ball in front of him. By the way,
he's more than happy to admit that one.
Yeah, that one he's been willing to admit up front. That would be awesome. I know it'll never happen, but it'd be great.
If you ask Mo about, hey, what's the move that you most regret, he immediately pinpoints one. Yeah. It's not hard to get him there. And that is indeed the one that he would go to. All right. So there was a really great piece by Derek Gould earlier today in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I highly recommend everybody go check it out because I think it is everything that the Cardinals have not been. It is transparent. It is open. It is honest about how things have arrived at the place that they are currently in. Now, most of this is about the pitching. And it's about Gordon Graceffo and Chris Roycroft, two guys that had a specific development plan in place by Pierpont, the pitching director for the Cardinals, and Rob Cerfolio, who is an assistant general manager for the Cardinals. If you want to hear our conversation with Cerfolio, you can do that. It was about a month ago here on BK and Ferrario. You can check it out on the podcast page. But Cerfolio was the main one that talked in this piece with Derek Gould, and he basically said, like, hey, every player that goes down to the minor leagues, before they go back down, we meet with them. And we put in place a specific plan on, hey, this is why you're going down. And this is what we're going to do in order to get you back up to the major league level. And they say that they tell every player that goes down, our goal, our plan is for you to get back up. We want to get you back up as quickly as humanly possible. That is the goal for everybody within the organization. And then they go through specifics on how they were able to do that with Chris Roycroft and with Gordon Graceffo. For Graceffo, it was about velocity. His velo had dipped down into the lower 90s, and we have seen it recently. It's ticking up into the upper 90s now that he's back into the bullpen. For Roycroft, it was about his sinker. The shape was off. It was not actually sinking the way that it previously was. And Roycroft says in the piece, hey, listen, it felt like a foreign object when I was throwing the baseball. I didn't have the feel that I had last year. And so the Cardinals had their director of pitching down in AAA at Memphis when Roycroft went back down. And he basically just said, like, hey, let me see what you're doing here. Let's go through this. Let's find out exactly what's going on. And what they found was he had his grip off a little bit. So he tweaked his grip, and now the sinker is not just what it was. It's actually better than it was a year ago based on this one little tweak to his grip mechanics. All of this is stuff that has, I believe, happened at times in the past, Andre Palante being one example, but you didn't have this kind of insight into it because the Cardinals were basically a fortress, and it was impossible because everything was seen as a state secret. So you couldn't find out what they were doing behind the scenes. And frankly, you couldn't really get people to talk about it because they didn't want to talk about it. So now they have new people in charge. They also have literally new jobs, including the pitching development guy in Pierpont, who did not exist a year ago. That job was not there. And so when you look at this and you see the things that the Cardinals are doing to get this thing back on track and to help these players develop at the minor league level and at the major league level, Cerfolio is based in St. Louis. Man, to me, I look at this and I say, oh, that's what the Blues do. Like, the Blues do this stuff, and then they talk about it publicly, and they help spread this information to their fan base, which is a big part of PR. It buys you goodwill if things don't work. At least people know publicly, hey, this is what I'm doing to fix it, even if it doesn't end up going in the right direction. This is brilliant, and it's so simple, and it's so easy to do, and yet it's something that the Cardinals have failed to do for, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah. When I read this piece, like hearing all the stuff that they were doing behind the scenes of like, hey, when they send a guy down, they meet with him, they tell him like, hey, here's your path forward to the big leagues. Like it sounds so simple, right? And what I mean by that is like, well, that feels like duh. Of course they meet with him and tell him how to get up to the big leagues. The thing is, to your point, I assume they did this over the last decade. We have no idea because they haven't said it publicly, right? They haven't said publicly like, hey, here's what we do with our pitching development. Here's what we've been telling them. They talk about, hey, we changed this grip with Chris Roycroft to really get that like bowling ball action on his sinker. I love what we're seeing from Rob Cerfolio and these guys that are kind of the new hires in the front office because, I mean, you brought up our conversation with Rob Cerfolio. He was upfront. He was honest. He brought up something to us that they've been changing through their player development. He walked us through what the process is like on when they try to make decisions on like, hey, where do we start at J.J. Weatherholt? And then in this piece with Derek Gold, he's telling you like, hey, here's what the process is like when a guy gets sent down to Memphis and how we are trying to get them back up. And baseball's not just about your 26-man roster. It's about your 40-man plus roster. Mm-hmm. So I like that we are starting to see the Cardinals be a little bit more upfront and honest, and that's why I wish they would let Chaim Bloom speak a little bit as well, right? Like that is the one critique I would have on this, but at least they are trending in the right direction. They are being more transparent as to what they are trying to do, and I think that started not just by what we're hearing from Cerfolio now. It also started, even though it was kind of a whiff of a press conference, it started in the offseason where they said, hey, this is a transition year, right? We are going to be more focused on runway than we are going to be on winning. Now, when that changes, we'll see, but at least they were upfront and honest and said, this is the plan going into 2025.
I agree with that, and I think that honesty and just like telling fans where you're at, where you're coming from, and explaining what the process is going to be, I think that earns you some goodwill. Now, it's not an infinite amount of goodwill. There's going to come a point in time, and it ain't all that long, where like if this was the best that the Blues end up ever being, dude, there's going to be a lot of questions that fans ask about it. Or if the Cardinals, like, this is the step, and then they don't do anything more to continue improving the product, well, yeah, Cardinals fans would have more than reasonable requests of like, hey, what happened? I thought we were going to be taking that next step, and instead it was we stagnated again. So it will not last forever, but I do think explaining yourself openly and honestly with the fans is something that can buy you a little bit of goodwill. There is this from the 314. Guys, the Cardinals are doing what every other organization has already been doing for more than 15 years. My opinion of Mo continues to go down. I think the Cardinals have been doing some of this stuff already. Now, they did not have Pierpont in place previously. That's noteworthy. Like, they had guys that were like kind of roaming instructors down in the minor leagues, but they had fewer of those than most baseball teams have had. So there is something to that. The Cardinals are doing a bit of catching up. There's no denying it. I also think some of this is just we're hearing about it for the first time. This is not something that was talked about very publicly in previous iterations because some of the people that were in these jobs were just honestly not as media friendly or not as good at explaining this stuff publicly to the fans and to the media as Rob Cerfolio is. And I think there's value in that. I think in today's game, you have to be good. Part of the job now is public relations and speaking to your fans through the media or speaking directly to the fans through your own team's media. Like, that stuff's really important, and they're starting, it appears, to get a little better at that.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about like that aspect of it, of speaking to the media, it also is not just speaking to the media, but coming off in I don't know if friendly is the right way about it. Like, what's always the conversation that we have with Mo, right? Like, Mo will say stuff to the media, and I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but it does sometimes feel like at least he projects to the fan base like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Let me do this, unlike what you guys are trying to say that we should do.
Yeah, it's the stuff that I do sometimes on the air. I know what I'm saying. You don't know what you're talking about. Allow me to be the voice of reason here. Yeah, I get that.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you said it.
Sure.
I think that is so important, and like I haven't gotten that vibe from like, and it's only been one conversation to be frank, but when we had our conversation with Rob Cerfolio, there was no kind of pushback of like, well, you know, why would we do that? This is what we are doing. You know, just listen to what we are saying. That has been their biggest problem. When they do speak to the media, sometimes it comes off as tone, as we would say on this show, of, hey, We know what we're doing. You don't. Let us do the job. And then, no, you can't do that in St. Louis. Cardinals fans know what they are talking about.
And I think a lot of that has changed over the last couple of years. Hearing some conversations with people around the club, like I think they are open to, hey, are we doing this right? Is this something that we need to change? Are we going about this the right way? Hell, Lars Nootbaar had a comment in the paper the other day where he was talking about the positioning for the Cardinals. And he's like, listen, 2 years ago, I don't think we were positioned in the right place. And now I think we are. And I think that's a big part of why things have changed. Like just those kinds of little tweaks of questioning, are we doing X, Y, and Z correct? And if so, cool, we'll keep going about it that way. If not, well, then let's see what else is available out there. Let's see what other things we can do to improve any of these individual aspects of our game. From the 314, guys, when was that interview with the new development guy again? Missed that at the time. Would love to go back and listen. You can check that out, 101ESPN.com, or just Google 101ESPN Rob Cerfolio, Cerfolio. If you Google that, it'll be the first thing that pops up. You can check out our interview with him. It was on YouTube as well, so you can watch it. And we are hoping to have Rob Cerfolio on the podcast, the Redbird Report, very soon as well. So we are hoping to get even more updates from the Cardinals assistant GM. I would think in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably have him on. So stay tuned for that. You can check out the latest edition of the Redbird Report right now at 101ESPN.com or the YouTube page at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL.
And we'll be playing that Rob Cerfolio interview on Monday around 1:45-ish. Because we've got a best of for Memorial Day. You can hear that conversation Monday around 1:45-ish is when it'll be playing.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get into Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. A question, sports or otherwise, we can get into those in about 15 minutes. But next, Sam Bennett. That is just not a player that I can think about logically right now. I'll explain why next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
Stanley Cup playoffs are on ESPN. Tomorrow night, Hurricanes and Panthers. Pregame at 6:30. Puck drop at 7. Your home for the NHL. 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN. Sports Center.
Gallon gets the gig in series opener. Good morning. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Tonight at 7:15, St. Louis kicks off a 3-game set against visiting Arizona. Former Cards prospect Zach Gallen will start for Torey Lovullo, while Ali Marmol counters with Miles Michaelis, number 39, rocking that 2.20 ERA so far this month. Elsewhere, Central leading Chicago visits Cincinnati as Hunter Green makes his first appearance since May 7th. Paul Skeens and Pittsburgh draw Milwaukee. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Long shot deflected wide by Verhage. Verhage swings it out in front. Score! Bennett! His second of the game. It is 4-0 Florida.
All right, what am I supposed to do with this guy, T-Bone? Because every time I turn on a Florida Panthers game, I know, like, oh, this is going to be the guy that everybody wants the Blues to sign. And then I look at his numbers, and I've watched him in the regular season, and he's good, but he's a, 50-point producer. In other words, he is what Brandon Saad was when the Blues went out and signed him. And the Blues signed Brandon Saad, what, 4 years, $4 million per year?
Yeah, something like that.
I know there's inflation going on in a lot of different areas in our world right now, and certainly the NHL with the salary cap is part of that. But I would not sign the equivalent of Brandon Saad to a 7-year, $7 million per year deal. I don't think it's changed that much in the last 3 seasons. And then I watched Sam Bennett play hockey, and I'm like, well, I'd pay that guy, though. I don't know if I would pay Brandon Saad that. I wouldn't. But this guy, I would. I can't be rational about this anymore. There's no way for me to. Now, I know all of this is setting up for me to be disappointed. Like, the Blues will sign Sam Bennett. He'll get the 7-year deal worth $7 million per year, and we'll watch him during the regular season. We'll be like, okay, I mean, it's good. He's a 20-goal scorer. He's going to produce like 40, 50 points. You feel nice about that. I don't feel $7 million nice about that. I certainly probably won't love the 7 years that they had to sign him to in order to get him to come here to St. Louis. But, dude, watch him in the playoffs. And right now, I think the Blues have the requisite talent to be fine during the regular season. I'm not all that worried about them as a regular season team. What I am curious about is, how do you take that next step in the postseason? What do you need in order to succeed this time of the year? And honestly, the answer is Sam Bennett, or players like Sam Bennett. I think sometimes it can be a bit overstated on how much you need grinders in the playoffs. No, you need finishers. You need guys that put the puck in the back of the net. And the best way to do so this time of the year is by parking your ass in front of that goalie and winning the dirty areas. Dude, Sam Bennett is the prototype of that player right now in the NHL. It's why I think Braden Shin translates well to playoff hockey. It's why Jake Neighbors translated well to playoff hockey. 7 years is an overpay. It's probably not going to age well. But you can't ask me to be rational about this player any longer. I've done it as long as I can. I've held off as long as I can. That 2-goal performance last night, he now has 34 playoff goals in his career. I'm done. If they sign Sam Bennett, I'll celebrate it.
Yeah, I don't know what you're supposed to make of players like this, because I'm with you. I think 7 years is probably an overpay for Sam Bennett. I mentioned this a couple days ago. Like, it reminds me a little bit of David Backes. He's a little bit younger, but like I would fear that the contract would age like that. And there's a reason the Blues didn't bring back David Backes, because they feared that style of play wasn't going to age well when he got into his 30s, and they were right on Backes. So, like, I look at that and I go, okay, man, I don't know if I want to go 7 years. I understand he is a little bit of a grinder, but do I need that in the regular season? And then you look at the playoffs, and he's like the center version of Jordan Binnington in the playoffs, man. Like, 9 goals in this playoff run so far with 13 points. That's ridiculous. Like, come on. I don't know how you should value that guy, because my answer would be you avoid the 7-year deal, because I think you're going to end up looking back on it saying that doesn't work for us, especially because I think when you really get into that cup window is probably about year 3 of that deal. And I hope that doesn't seem off to people. I hope they don't think that I'm like being too negative on the Blues there. But I think the first 2 years of the deal, the next 2 years are still kind of, hey, we're in the winning window, but we're still kind of adding to this core. We're still trying to add and kind of do the little tweaks to get us to being a cup contender. My fear is you give him 7-year deal, he's not going to age gracefully by the time you are ready to go on this cup run. And I don't know what that would mean for him in the playoffs, right? In the regular season, it's one thing. But when you get to the playoffs, will he still be able to produce at this level? That's why I understand watching him in the playoffs makes me a little reckless on what I want to say about him. I still in the camp of I would not be willing to give him a 7-year deal.
I get it. I don't blame you. I think that's probably the rational argument. And who was it? I think it was it Theo Epstein that said if you're rational about every free agent, you'll never sign a free agent?
Yeah.
That's how I feel in this one. Like, yes, I understand the argument. What I'm saying is stupid. Like, it's dumb. It's not the correct way to build your team. And yet, I don't really care. Like, I think this guy is the type of player that could put you over the top. Like, if you build a team around Sam Bennett, and I'm not trying to say like he's the franchise player or anything. He's not. He's like a second or third line center. But if you build a requisite level of team around him, he can be the type of player that like Matthew Tkachuk has not done much in this postseason. Sam Bennett is effectively replacing the production they expected to get out of Matthew Tkachuk. Like think about that for a second. He has that ability. Now, a lot of people are asking, and I think it's a totally fair question, what does he look like away from Matthew Tkachuk? We legitimately don't know the answer to that question. We haven't seen it. His entire career basically has been spent with Matthew Tkachuk. So I don't know. And I don't know that the Blues do not have anybody that is anywhere close to what Matthew Tkachuk is as a player. But they do have some pretty good ones. Like, could he fit in pretty well with Dylan Holloway? Yeah. Would he fit nicely on a line with Jordan Kyrou? I think so. Could you then bump Braden Shin down to that third line or just keep Shin up there and like flip him around? But could you put Braden Shin on the third line, especially as he's aging, takes less wear and tear on his body throughout the regular season, hopefully keep him even more fresh for the postseason. And then you've got Shin playing with Jake Neighbors and Zach Bolduc. Like, hell yeah, dude. That sounds like a pretty damn good line to me as well. So you can't ask me to be rational about this anymore because I won't. And do you remember Justin Williams, T-Bone? Were you old enough to remember him?
Kind of. I remember playing him in like the NHL video
Justin
game.
Williams?
Hurricanes, baby.
Yeah.
Justin Williams was a consistent 20 to 25 goal scorer in the regular season. He was fine. He was a good player. He's consistently around like 45 to 50 points. He had some injury stuff, but like he was just an overall really good player. And then you get into the playoffs, and he was a superstar. And it didn't make any sense, and it didn't have to make sense. He's just, for whatever reason, his game translated to the postseason. He won a cup with Carolina, won 2 cups with the Kings. Like, was just an awesome playoff performer. I think that might be Sam Bennett. And Justin Williams was a guy that translated into his mid to late 30s. He's just a really good player later on in his career. They're not one for one. They're not the exact same style of player or anything like that. But I think that might be what we're witnessing here. It's just a guy that, for whatever reason, his game translates to this time of the year.
So I'm going to ask a question. There are no stupid questions here on the show because Alex wanted to trade Dvorsky yesterday.
Sure.
So you mentioned the Blues don't have a Matthew Tkachuk. And I agree with that, right? And you said, hey, we don't know what it looks like.
Anybody has a Matthew Tkachuk other than the Florida Panthers.
I agree. But what can this player I'm about to bring up kind of serve as that role if you brought in Sam Bennett? Could Holloway be that guy? And I don't know if he's going to be a 100-point guy. Like, Tkachuk was a 100-point guy back-to-back seasons. But, like, look at his 23-24 season. 26 goals, 62 assists. I can see where he's like a 35-goal guy, less assist.
Yeah.
Could he be your lesser, like 80, 85% version of Matthew Tkachuk? And then could that be the reason you convince yourself of, hey, if we brought in a Sam Bennett, sure, we don't have a Matthew Tkachuk. We don't know what that looks like when he's away from Matthew Tkachuk. Mm-hmm. But what if we have what we believe is our version, our little bit lesser version of that in Dylan Holloway?
Sure, yeah. I don't think it's Matthew Tkachuk, but like basically what you're saying is, can you recreate the second line success that the Panthers are experiencing with that Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Sam Bennett line?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you could be 85% of that. And if you become that, dude, that's been a driving force for the Panthers to get to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals. And yes, I'm willing to do that right now. Florida's going to advance to the Stanley Cup final. That's happening. Carolina's done, dude. Did you watch that game last night? That was ridiculous. They had no chance. They had like 8 shots on goal going into the third period. It was embarrassing. Anyways, could the Blues recreate some of that success? Yeah. And they also have a top line that has Robert Thomas on it, and they've got a defensive core that this year was one of the best in the first round of the playoffs when it came to their goal-scoring ability and just overall offensive production. And they've got something in net that it can only be rivaled right now, really, by the Florida Panthers and what Sergei Bobrovsky is providing to them. So, yeah, I don't think that it would be the same as what the Panthers have been able to create. But could it be 85% of it? Sure. Yeah, I think you could be. And I think that's what you're trying to do.
And I could see how that might be the front office probably wouldn't do this, but I could see how that is something that you can look at and then hone in on and say, yeah, it's 7 years. I don't know if I like this 7-year deal, but man, to your point of like, if you get to the playoffs, and I will say this because I saw somebody text in and say, hey, the window is now, because I said, hey, they're not their cup window yet. Hey, man, you can get to the playoffs. We've seen this before. Anything can happen, right? That first year of the Panthers going on that run, they were like an 8 seed. They ran through the best team in Boston, and they were able to take them down. I think it was in 7 games. So if you can just get there and you have this style of player, and what I'm saying of that, like 85% of that Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, and Bennett line, I can see how you convince yourself, yeah, 7 years is a lot, but we might be able to make this work by creating a partial version of the Florida Panthers line.
What I used to get frustrated about with the Cardinals. And so I have to be fair about this here, right? If I'm going to argue the Cardinals should be in favor of signing guys to those long-term deals. Now, I feel this way about superstars for the Cardinals, and Sam Bennett is not that.
Yeah.
But like the Cardinals are so concerned about that like back end of a 10-year deal for a guy that's 26, and yet they sign guys that are 31 to 5-year deals. So you're getting the back end of that deal. The flexibility that you're concerned about, the years that you're worried about, the production declining, you're already signing up for that without the front end. And on Sam Bennett, because he is, relatively speaking, for a free agent, pretty young, you are getting the front end of that deal. So over the next 3 to 4 years, you should be expecting prime Sam Bennett, whatever that means. And in that 3 to 4 year stretch, I think that's when the Blues are going to be hitting their stride. So you actually might be hitting your stride at the exact time that you would want to for a guy like Sam Bennett. Now, I said yesterday, the concern here is, what if there is another player that becomes available that's better than Sam Bennett? And you can't pivot because you're stuck. Because you probably have to give a no-trade clause to Sam Bennett in this deal. You almost certainly have to give a no-trade clause to Dylan Holloway when he signs his extension. Same thing for Broberg when he signs his extension. And now you're locked into, I think it was yesterday I counted, it was like 10 different players, 13 different players, something like that, at $6 to $8 million on multi-year deals for the next 3 seasons. You really, there is no way to get off of that. Now you're stuck. It could be a good thing that they're just locked in. Could also be a bad thing if things go south and there's a player that becomes available and other teams in your division, for example, can pivot and go acquire that guy, and you simply cannot. That flexibility doesn't exist any longer. So if you go out there and get Bennett, you better be right. And if it doesn't work out, now you've locked yourself into a team that just might be like a consistent second-round exit. That might be what you're signing up for. That's the downside to it.
It's a different sport, so I don't know if the comparison is fair or not. It's kind of like what the Braves are, right? Like you look at the Atlanta Braves in baseball, they locked up their entire core, and it's really limited what their flexibility has been, because there's been a lot of talk in the recent exits in the postseason of, do you change the core? Do you change the core? And they're going, well, we don't know how. We're limited to our version of the budget, their version of a salary cap, what ownership gives them, so they don't really have any pivots. So they're kind of stuck on what their core is. And as we've seen with the Braves right now, it's kind of trending in the wrong direction. That could be kind of the comparison if you did go that route where you have multiple guys on those contracts. Now, I guess if you were Army, your hope would be, and it looks like it's going to continue to rise, is that the cap continues to go up to where it does create more flexibility like 4 or 5 years down the road.
We did ask for some mic drops earlier in the show today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The Scott Lee Heating mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. We will get to those coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. Our question for you guys, is this the weekend that we start to see attendance start to bump back up? And if you're somebody that's still holding out, what is the reason why you're holding out? Want to hear from you throughout the day today here on BK and Ferrario. Ask Us Anything is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Take the fast lane home weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Carrie Davis on 101 ESPN. 2 former pros and 1 average Joe. The fast lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. Back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions. We may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, you can get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. We got this from the 618, continuing our conversation about Sam Bennett from the 618. Is a 7-year deal to a very good 28-year-old with high-level experience a risk, though? If anything, I would just throw a lot of years and a lot more money at Marner, who can get you 100 points at a similar age. Marner scares the hell out of me. And it's because of what the Blues already have on the roster. And I think this is part of the conversation, T-Bone, is you're not just adding a player just to do so. This is something that I think football teams get in the situation, like the Bears last year. I think the Bears just added receivers to add receivers. And they didn't think about the roles that they were going to have to take on. Like Keenan Allen, he's not going to block.
Yeah.
In that system that they ran last year, they needed a slot receiver that would be willing, even if he's not totally capable, but willing to block. And it failed spectacularly. They had too many egos in that wide receiver room to make that work. I bring that up to compare to what the Blues are. The Blues need finishers. The Blues need guys that are going to put the puck in the back of the net. The Blues need guys that are selfish with the puck. Just put it in. And I think Marner is the opposite of that. Marner is an unbelievable distributor. I think the Blues have enough of those guys. Kyrou really, at his heart, is a distributor first. He's an excellent distributor. He's also a good finisher, but he sometimes gets into the habit of passing first. Booch is that way. Thomas is that way. They need guys that are selfish, and I think that's what Sam Bennett could bring to the table. I think Marner would be more of the same.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when you look at Mitch Marner, he is more of the distributor. And I get lost of this sometimes when we're having these Blues conversations where I just kind of look at, okay, what'd he do from a points perspective, right? It's easy to fall victim to that of, okay, well, he had 102 points. Yeah, that's great. But you also have to talk about the role as to what he's going to play on the team. And I think, as Alex has brought it up, you just mentioned it there, I think you become a little too pass happy if you bring in a Mitch Marner. So I don't think he fits with the Blues.
From the 636, BK, last week, the Missouri legislature left without funds for the Chiefs of the Royal Stadium. Are you ready to concede that they will be moving to Kansas? And if not, how come? I have said all along, I believe that the Chiefs plan to move to Kansas. So I think that one is a fait accompli. And honestly, I don't really care. If they're not staying at Arrowhead, as long as they're in Kansas City, I don't really care within Kansas City where they play. All I cared about, like, if Arrowhead is still viable, then stay at Arrowhead. The stadium rocks. It's awesome. If you've ever been to a game in Kansas City, it's a really cool environment. It's unbelievable tailgating scene. Like, that stuff is what matters to me. But beyond that, like, I don't care. You want to go 20 minutes away to the Kansas side of things? Cool. No harm, no foul by me. If they were downtown, maybe I would feel differently about it. But they're in like a random... It'd be like if the Cardinals played in like Brentwood. Would be like the comparison for Kansas City. Or maybe it'd be more like them playing in like Hazelwood. It's just not...
Yeah, they are in a weird spot.
Yeah, it's like 15, 20 minutes outside of downtown. So yeah, cool,
like
fine by me.
I think you were the one who said it yesterday or 2 days ago of like you look across... You know, like when I've been to Coors Field, you look at Coors Field, you look across the beautiful mountains. Bush, you look across the beautiful arch. KC, you look across, you go, is that a highway?
It is.
Yeah, that is a highway.
It's the overpass. It's wonderful. If you just ignore that completely, Kauffman's a really cool stadium, but the overpass is not great in the backdrop. I do, for the Royals, though, I would really like to see them play downtown. We don't have to get into this at all, but I do think baseball in a downtown environment is the best way to consume it. I believe that here. I believe it in Denver. You mentioned them, T-Bone. Like, the Red Sox are very close to their, like, central area. I think baseball is best when it is played in a downtown environment. That's my personal opinion. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us. Anything from the 239. Guys, what's a realistic move the Cardinals could make that sets them up for not only this year, but also aligns with their long-term plans? Those are tough at a deadline. A lot of the time, most of the time, the guys that move at a deadline are
rentals,
pending free agents. So, like, Fetty was that, right? Jordan Montgomery was that. The Cardinals prefer traditionally to go with somebody like that. John Lackey 10 years ago was that kind of a player that he was locked in for the rest of that season and the next on that option. So I don't know who that player will be, but those are definitely the types of guys that I would personally be looking into. It's just hard to know who those players are going to be on the market because we're so far away from it.
Yeah, that's definitely the guy they should try and target. And I would say if you're going to do that, I think it's kind of the path that you just laid out there. It probably is a starter that's got a little bit more control. That way you add a little bit to your starting pitching depth. That helps you both for this year and next year and has some swing and miss. I don't really know who that guy's going to be just yet. It kind of depends on, like, you look at some of the teams that we know right now are sellers. The reason they're sellers is they don't have pitching, right? Like, you look, well, Colorado's a bad example. They suck at everything. But, like, you look at the White Sox, they suck at everything. But you look at, like, Baltimore, they just don't have pitching right now. Like, even what we thought were going to be some of their best arms have been really bad this year. So that's the biggest problem, is I think that's the area you want to target. Problem is it's really hard to find those guys because that's why teams are typically bad. They almost have to try and get creative and do the Montgomery trade again, which is you send out a piece that you really liked in Harrison Bader, but the Yankees had an obvious need for a Gold Glove center fielder, so they were willing to trade from some of their depth.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, can we shoot down the idea that the Cardinals should trade Arenado to the Cubs? There are too many media members that are currently mentioning it. That's because it was on MLB Network. Dan O'Dowd had mentioned that as he brought up the 3 trades that he wants to see. One of them was the Cardinals sending Arenado to Chicago. I'm not going to shoot it down because, like, I have no idea what the deadline's going to look like. I also think that there's no legs to it. Like, it's not a real rumor or report. It's just one guy that is a former GM said he thinks this is something that would be cool. That's all there was to it.
Yeah, there's no reporting to that, and like based on our sense, like, though Arenado is having another down year, and I don't think he's bouncing back to his superstar status, he matters in that clubhouse. Like, I do believe, and I even state that I think the clubhouse stuff is a little overstated, overrated, however you want to call it. If the Cardinals players, that young core, likes Arenado, having him around, the Cardinals are going to keep him around.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. Next one up here from the 314. The Hurricanes have lost 14 consecutive Eastern Conference Finals games in a row. Joel Embiid has never made an Eastern Conference Finals. Would you rather have never made it to a conference finals or make it and get swept every single time? I'd rather make it and get swept. At least then you get there.
That would become very frustrating.
Totally, but never getting there is also equally frustrating.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I think that's
basically
tough.
like asking, would you rather be the '90s Braves or like the 2020s
Cardinals,
Brewers?
Yeah, I think
I'd rather
with
be
you.
the Braves.
I'd be the team that gets there and you get swept. It does add frustration. I also think it adds kind of fuel to the fire, right? Because it's a long grind. You get there and then you finally are bounced and swept away. I think that adds a little bit of fuel to the fire. But man, that long of a losing streak, and that's brutal.
At least be in the mix. Trusted that process.
Yeah, no kidding.
They got booed off of the ice after the first period last night.
Well, that's fair.
It was justified.
Greg Wyshynski had the best tweet of the night. I thought he said, I don't even know if Rod Brendamore went outside and was able to do deadlifts with a semi-truck right now, if it would do enough to get the Hurricanes back in this game. I was like, yeah, that's probably true.
Coming up in 15 minutes, what is your faith that the Cardinals will do what's necessary whenever they're ready to win? Something that the Fast Lane brought up yesterday. Wanted to get your thoughts on this. We'll also play a few of your mic drops coming up in 15 minutes. But next, Mike McKenna joins us as he does each and every Friday on behalf of Macadoodles. He'll do so here on BK and Ferrario.
WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
Save by Mike McKenna. How do you like me now?
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by Mike McKenna. He's a former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario, and he does so on behalf of the fine folks over at Macadoodles. Mike, we appreciate the time as always. How you doing today?
Doing phenomenal. It's hot on the floor out there. I don't know, man. I can't even walk away for a second. It's cranking here at Macadoodle's Dardenne Prairie. How you doing?
I would assume so. We got a nice holiday weekend, so a lot going on for folks out there. I'm doing well, and Mike, I can't be contained any longer. Sam Bennett, I can't be asked to be rational about the guy. Scored another couple of goals last night. It seems like every time that I flip on a Florida Panthers game, he's doing something in a positive way to impact their ability to win. I'm done. I can't resist any longer. I'm all in on the Sam Bennett hype train. I get it.
Oh, you're full fanboy. This is it, man. You're going to be the guy leading the charge. I tell you what, this playoff, though, sure is up in his value. And that's what makes me nervous from a Blues perspective or anybody else in the league is that what's Sam Bennett going to command on the open market now? Are we looking at a guy that's going to be 7? He's going to be well north of that, 8, 8.5.
Oh, God.
Dude, there's going to be a bidding war, because it's exactly what you just described, that you're noticing him. He's scoring, yes, but he's impacting games. And those type of game-changing players are at a premium. The Blues have a couple. They could definitely use 1 or 2 more. Stanley Cup contenders, they got a half dozen of those game breakers, Think about those Tampa teams when you had Stamkos and you had Kucherov and you had Braden Point and Hedman and Vasilevsky. That depth of talent is important, but I don't know. I get it. I know you're hot on Bennett, but Brock Nelson didn't help himself much at the end of the year compared to Bennett. So we'll see how it goes.
And Mike, how do you, BK mentions he's fallen head over tea kettle right now for him, right? How do you look at a guy like Sam Bennett who performs great in the postseason, which is going to be the thing that gets him paid, but then you look at the regular season numbers and it's nothing that really stands off the page for you?
Well, you have to look at it when everything matters. And Justin Williams was a name in the NHL that's a great example. He was a great leader. He was a very good player. But, man, when the postseason hit, that guy's value was through the roof. And he did it with the Canes. He did it with L.A. He went back to the Canes, and he was a winner. And I really see the premium of having players that don't disappear in the postseason, and that's where – we had this discussion last week where I just don't know about John Tavares. I still don't. I don't know if he's a guy that can carry the mill in the playoffs, especially as he's getting older and longer in the tooth. Whereas you get a guy with Bennett who's still in his prime, sub 30, who what he's going to do. And there's just so much value because in the regular season you have to hope as a general manager, if you're Doug Armstrong, that you've built a good enough team to get you to the postseason. But once you get there to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you got the horses that, 1, know how to win, and 2, can pick an entire team up on their shoulders and carry them.
What a brilliant comparison he just made.
Yeah,
what a brilliant comparison to bring up Justin Williams in the conversation about Sam Bennett.
He only says that because that's who he literally brought up 20 minutes ago.
I promise you there's no telepathy between the two of us, although I don't know, man. I think we might have something going on here, but it's real, though. I mean, Dustin Brown was another guy who was kind of like that, and I go back to L.A. in the same way. But, man, I played with players that regular season, pretty good, and then something just clicks. And for me, that's the inner competitive fire. That's the will to win, man. Some people shrink, and some just cherish that opportunity, and you see it from Bennett.
We're talking to Mike McKenna here on 101 ESPN. Speaking of shrinking, Mike, what is going on with the Carolina Hurricanes? Why can't they win in the Eastern Conference Finals? And I'm not just talking about in the last 2 games. Like, it's 12 consecutive now?
Something like that, yeah.
14 consecutive?
I just think they run around too much trying to play man-to-man in their own zone. They're really direct. They're on top of people, but I don't think it wins. End of story. And I just don't. Like, you look at the teams that have won in recent years, and you're all playing a hybrid zone defense. It's a little bit more contained to the middle. Carolina gets strung out. I also don't think, even though I don't think goaltending's been a problem for them, I just don't know if they really look at their net and believe in it the same way as some other teams. And I hate to throw shade at goalies. You know that, guys, but I think it's real. I just don't think that playoff-wise hockey, you can't necessarily roll out the same in-your-face, aggressive on everything, man-on-man, chase the play style like you have to in the playoffs, where if you can't keep shots from the outside, you're not going to win. And that's been Carolina. And frankly, they haven't learned their lesson. It just keeps happening every year.
Mike, you mentioned just a couple minutes ago about, hey, I want guys that don't shrink in the playoffs. And a guy that's becoming a focal point of conversation once again now that we are in the offseason for the Blues is Jordan Kyrou. Had 3 goals in the playoff series against Winnipeg, but only 1 goal at even strength. Is he a guy that you believe the Blues can win in the playoffs if Jordan Kyrou is in their top 6?
Yes, I do. And here's why. Jordan Kyrou, his game grew by leaps and bounds this year. Defensively, more responsible. He played more direct at times, which we've all been clamoring for. Same with Robert Thomas. We want to see him take the puck to the net, get the shot off like they can. We saw Kyrou score more often with clean shots than we have in a while. I think the growth that you saw in the regular season, it can still grow in the playoffs for someone like Kyrou. But I think it is also imperative that the Blues fill out that number 2 center role. However it may happen, whether it is acquiring somebody, whether it's trading, whether it's signing, whether somebody magically comes from within and just blows us all away. I don't think until there's 2 centermen that can really distribute pucks, carry the mail, I don't think when the chips are down in the playoffs, you're going to see the best out of Jordan Kyrou. I think once the Blues acquire that right person, Kyrou's going to take off in the playoffs. The game gets harder, but when you've got somebody that can put pucks into good areas to help you out, like Kyrou needs, that's going to help him. I think there's still growth there, and yes, I think they can win with him.
Mike, we got to get your thoughts on what is, I know, a big thing that you're going to be watching this weekend. That's the Indy 500. You are a racing man at heart. I know you played hockey for a living, but you love racing. The Indy 500 is this weekend. We have the spread zone here at 101 ESPN. They made all of their picks over the last couple of days, did a fantastic job with it. I wanted to get your pick. Who you got in the Indy 500?
Well, you know, my brain tells me I should be picking Scott Dixon. My heart tells me I shouldn't be picking Alex Palou because he has yet to win on an oval. Both of them are Chip Ganassi racing drivers. They're both world class. They've got 8 or 9 championships between them, but only one Indy 500, and that's Scott Dixon. Guys, I think it's time that Pato O'Ward, driving for Arrow McLaren, pulls into victory lane. He's finished twice at the Indy 500. He's been outdueled by an illegal car that Joseph Newgarden drove last year. To my daughter, I'm very sorry to say that. It's her favorite driver, Newgarden, but Penske just got caught cheating for the second time in 2 years, and the guy owns the series. They had to put their cars to the back of the field for this race. I think O'Ward has the ability to adapt. I think he's got the aggressiveness necessary to win. Frankly, I think he's got the balls to win because you have to have that in the closing laps of the 500. I think it's going to be a win from either Arrow McLaren or from Ganassi Racing, and I'm going to go Pato O'Ward driving that Arrow McLaren papaya-colored car into victory lane.
He's the favorite right now. If you want to bet on him over on FanDuel, he's 5-1 to win the Indy 500. He is enlisted right now as the favorite to be able to do so. Mike, we will certainly be watching that over the weekend. We will also be stopping by Macadoodles, where we, I'm sure, can get all of the best offerings that you guys have available right now. What's going on this weekend for Memorial Day weekend at Macadoodles, my friend?
Well, I'll tell you, the floor is hot right now. I got to get back out there in a little bit because people are all over the joint. We just got Bush Apple in, guys. You better run. We just got in 20 cases, 12 packs. That means we've got 40 12 packs of Busch Light Apple. And this stuff's hotter than the sun in January or in the middle of summer. Like, you better get here for it. Next weekend, we've got a couple events. Four Hands will be taking over Macadoodles on the 30th, Friday the 30th. That's right. Four Hands takes over. Tastings all around the building, spirits and beer. Then the following day is an allocated whiskey raffle taking place. So we're really excited about that coming up. We're running big deals on the things. You can see it all on our social media. Follow us at Macadoodles Dardine Prairie. And if you're also feeling in the IndyCar mood, go visit Ed Carpenter Racing's Facebook page, where in the preseason I conducted a series of interviews with all of their crew members, and those are going live right now. We just had one go up with one of their crew members who's an ex-NFL player. So lots of fun stuff. Come see us at Macadoodles, Bryan and Feisey Road, just north of the Page Extension here in Dardine Prairie.
Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy yourself this weekend. Be safe out there. We'll talk with you again next week.
Same to you, everybody. Have a great time. Be safe. Get those pools open. We'll see you at Macadoodles.
You got it. That's Mike McKenna joining us on behalf of Macadoodles, as he does each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. If you missed any of our conversation with him, I think it was a really good one. Check it out on the podcast page after the show today at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. That podcast is sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
Coming up in 15 minutes, what is your level of faith that the Cardinals will do what's necessary when they're ready to win? We'll get into that. We will also hear from you on the Mic Drop feature on the 101 ESPN app on whether or not you're ready to go back to the ballpark now that the Cardinals are playing some inspired baseball. But T-Bone, there's a piece that just dropped over on the Daily Faceoff. It continues our conversation about the center situation for the Blues. This is the title. Expect an NHL-wide spending frenzy for centers this offseason. I'll give you some of the details on that next year on 101 ESPN.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
All right, so I've got some bad news for Blues fans that are hoping to acquire Sam Bennett. This might be a BKO. And if it is, it's an all-timer because it literally took place in like an hour after I said, yeah, I'm ready to get crazy. I don't know if I'm ready to get this crazy. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. All right, so I'm going to read you some of a piece that was just posted over on the Daily Faceoff, T-Bone. The title of this piece: expect an NHL-wide spending frenzy for centers this offseason. It continues as follows. There will surely be unnecessary dollars spent, but with the cap expected to skyrocket well over $100 million in the coming 3 years, there is a lot more wiggle room for GMs to take on risks on bigger swings for short-term benefit that will come with inherent long-term risk. Speaking with some teams around the NHL, one position in particular seems to be at the top of the list for those looking to make significant stabs in the market this summer: center. Of all the teams that I've had communication with, and I assume are gearing up to take a big swing, I expect the Minnesota Wild to be among the most, if not the most aggressive in doing so. It would make a lot of sense for the Wild to zero in on top targets such as Sam Bennett and Brock Nelson. He continues. The Florida Panthers' Bennett, who will turn 29 next month, figures to be the biggest fish in the pond in the way of centers coming through this July. Bennett has cemented himself as one of the most unique players in the NHL, one who raises his play when the chips are down. There is a belief that Sam Bennett's AAV could push upwards of $9 million with the max term of 7 years. Given Nelson's age, a 3 or 4 year term is more likely in the cards with a cap hit in the neighborhood of Claude Giroux, somewhere around $6.5 million. If I were a betting man, I would say the Wild will land one of Bennett or Nelson because of their desire to push themselves into being a cup contender. He then goes on to list some of the other teams that could be in the market. That includes the Philadelphia Flyers, the Vancouver Canucks. He talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs if they want to pivot off of John Tavares. Also talked about the New Jersey Devils as a team that could potentially look out there. The Winnipeg Jets, another one that could look out there. Did not mention the Blues specifically, but I would imagine the Blues will be in the market for a center, even if it's not this center. So, T-Bone, we've been talking about this and questioning 7 years, $7 million per year. How do you feel about that? Guess we got to up the ante. 7 years, $9 million per year. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I really don't think I would cash in on that. I don't think I would do Sam Bennett at 7 by 9. I will say this, though. If I'm going to be pushed on kind of, I'll call it an overpaid. I don't even know if that's fair because this was going to happen with the increase in the salary cap. If there is one spot where I am going to be pushed to maybe get into a bidding war, it would be for Sam Bennett, not for that middle tier, right? I would rather overpay a guy that's going to be the second line center, like we just talked about in the playoffs. 7 might be overpaying.
I agree. We're talking about 9.
But the reason I say that is there's one thing I don't really want to do, which is really get pushed on like that mid-tier free agent, because that's where the Cardinals always fell victim. Yeah. Like if I'm going to be critical of the Cardinals of going to the Steven Matz shopping bin, then I think I have to be somewhat critical of the Blues if they're going to push down to that tier and it really increases in the salary.
I'm not, because of the years. The term is really what does it. Like, if you're telling me I can get a 3-year deal at $6.5 million per year for Brock Nelson, or I can get a 7-year deal for $9 million per year for Sam Bennett, that's no contest for me. I lean Brock Nelson every day of the week. I thought it was going to be 3 years versus 7 years for the same money. This is not the same money. It's nowhere close to the same money. It's 50% more money for one player over the other. And that to me is like, yeah, I love Sam Bennett. I've been amazed by what he's done. And like an hour ago, I was singing a very different tune. An hour ago, he was going to cost $14 million less. And now suddenly we're talking about a $9 million per year player. There's also this aspect to it, T-Bone. And this is not the deciding factor, but it is a factor. I do wonder how your team looks at you if suddenly Sam Bennett is making more money than Robert Thomas, than Jordan Kyrou, than Pavel Buchnevich, and if you pay Sam Bennett $9 million per year, what am I then going to have to pay to Dylan Holloway, who can look at me and say, I'm better than that dude? yeah, I'm not as experienced as Sam Bennett, but my first year in the league was more productive than anything Sam Bennett has done in his entire career. And if this is where the market is trending, you bet your ass if we just play this thing out, I'm going to get $9 million a year from somebody, whether that's you or elsewhere. So I do wonder a little bit, if you were to go do this, if you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes, what does it do for the team dynamic, which was so excellent this year, and it was a part of their success?
Yeah, so the Holloway one is a fair one, I would say, because you're right. Holloway will be then asking for that dollar figure. This is where I have a tough time with, and this is where me as the guy that is kind of the not anti-locker room, but a little bit skeptical of how much
anti-locker room vibes. Yes,
but like the reason I get ready to say that is, okay, so then like we're saying for the next whatever it is 5-6 years left on Robert Thomas' deal, you can't go sign a guy for $8 million or more. Like I just don't think that's fair to operate. Like,
no, but he better be better than like this is what I would say. If you're going to do that, go sign a player that is going to make more than Robert Thomas. Damn well better be better than Robert Thomas. And Sam Bennett is not better than Robert Thomas.
So I agree Sam Bennett's not better than Robert Thomas. And again, I wouldn't do this 7-year by $9 million deal. But like if I'm Doug Armstrong and I say, if that is the deal that I think really helps us get into our winning window and I think is the piece we need this offseason, I'm not going with that question of, oh, well, am I worried about Thomas making less than him? Because that's just where Robert Thomas signed his deal, right? Like that's unfortunate. He signed the dotted line, okay?
Sure. I think you are underestimating like interpersonal dynamics within a team. I think they do matter. And I there's nothing that Robert Thomas can do here. He has no way to get out of this deal. He has no way to like say, hey, I should be making more money. No, like this is the deal that you signed. This is what you end up making. But like if you work at a company and you're better than somebody else that they bring in that is new, and you know, I don't know how you know this, but if you know like that guy is now making more than me, yeah, it's okay to be a little frustrated by that. And I do think it would be human for Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Pavel Buchnevich to be frustrated by it. I don't think that's the reason you don't sign Sam Bennett. The reason you wouldn't sign Sam Bennett is because you think 7 years, $9 million is crazy. But if you get yourself to a place where you're like, okay, we're comfortable with 7 by 7.5, what is preventing us from getting to 9? It's the risk of the money. It's the risk of what that prevents you from doing in the future. It's also the possibility of Sam Bennett not aging particularly gracefully because of his style of play. And then you add in the interpersonal dynamics and the fact that that now becomes the bar for you to be able to re-sign Dylan Holloway, because if it's on your own team, that's a little different than Sam Bennett signing with the Minnesota Wild. Like then it becomes a tougher comparison if you're the agent. I think this is just like a flat out no. An hour ago, I wasn't saying this. I understand, because an hour ago, the price of poker was a little bit cheaper than it is currently based on this reporting that this guy's put out there. But if this is truly the price for Sam Bennett, $9 million is too much.
Yeah, I wouldn't do this deal for Sam Bennett. I agree with that. I think $9 million is too much. I think 7 years by $7 million is too much. I just don't think this contract's going to age gracefully. That's why I wouldn't do it. But I wouldn't worry about the whole contract dynamic stuff to me, that like the Thomas thing. And again, I don't think that's going to be a conversation this offseason for them, because I truly believe they're not going to go shop in the Sam Bennett market. I think they're going to look at that. No, I think they're not going to pay $9 million. I don't think they would get in a bidding war to go do that for these top tier free agents. Even though they are going in the right direction, I think there are cup contenders that are going to be interested in Sam Bennett that he would rather go play for. And I think Army, because of what I've seen with the David Backes, and I know that he's a little bit younger. I still think
4 years younger. I think that's.
I think that's the thing that's going to drive him away from it, though.
Maybe.
Right? Because I think Army is smart. I think he's going to look at this and say, in 3 years, we're still probably. It's probably 3 years till we get there, and at that point, maybe we're at the part where you're starting to see that decline in this deal. So I don't think Army's doing the Bennett contract.
Somebody on the text line from the 314 said, guys, when the Blues signed Stastny, I specifically remember Army saying he talked to Backes, Petro, etc. about paying Stastny more than what they were going to get to make sure that they were comfortable with it. I think that's a real thing. T-Bone, you can push back on it and say that it's stupid. You can say that you're upset about it. You can say that it's not something that should be out there. It is absolutely something that these organizations take into consideration. So I think it is at least something that you keep in the back of your mind as a potential tiebreaker for the team. Again, you could think that's stupid. That's totally cool. That is your opinion on the matter. But we also have to acknowledge the way that this stuff works in professional sports, and that is part of it. That is something that they will, I truly do believe, at least take into consideration. Whether that's right or wrong, you can have your own opinions on that. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer, but next, want to hear from you. Mic Drop features on the 101 ESPN app. Are you more open to going to Cardinals games now than you would have been at the beginning of the season? And if not, what is still holding you back? We'll talk about that. Hear from you guys coming up next on the Mic Drop feature here on BK and Ferrario.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Redbirds seek rebound opportunity. I'm Bradford Bruns with a Sports Center update presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Having dropped to their last two versus Detroit, Ollie Marmol's Cardinals aim for something better tonight. Fourth place Arizona is in town after losing back-to-back games at Dodger Stadium. STL skipper continues trusting that process.
I really like where our guys are in this process of development and how they're approaching their day, overall their mindset and just the intentionality to their work. That's been the key to all of this, and this is why I do believe it's sustainable.
Mound-wise, Miles Michaelis gets the nod roughly 7 hours from now. St. Louis currently sitting just 3 behind Central Best Chicago. Those Cubs, meanwhile, visit Cincinnati later. Pittsburgh's Paul Skeens tackles Milwaukee. Clayton Kershaw makes start number 2 of 2025 as L.A. hits Citi Field. The SportsCenter update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are going out to the Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature during this segment. We've had a bunch of these. I asked at the beginning of the show, is this the weekend that we're going to see attendance start to bump back up? I'm not expecting 40,000 fans in the stands. I'm not sure that we'll get any games like that other than basically opening day this season. The Cardinals came out, Bill DeWitt III did in an article earlier today by Katie Wu over at The Athletic and said, like, hey, we're pretty much in line with what we thought we would be attendance-wise. But this is a good series. The Cardinals have been playing inspired baseball, so are you ready to go back out to the stadium? Wanted to hear from you. The mic drop feature is the place to do so. We've got a bunch of these to listen to. Let's start with Andrew.
No, I will absolutely not be attending any games.
Okay.
The ownership still sucks, and until they sell the team and get somebody in there who actually cares and can read the room, I will not be attending Cardinal games.
Not great.
I'm asked and answered.
Yeah, I don't think Andrew's going to be at the ballpark for a while. But
Andrew, we'll see you out there in like 5 years, probably.
I respect to hell, though, that you're willing to say what you really believe.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate the DeWitt selling anytime soon. So, Andrew, I'm sorry. I probably won't see you at Busch Stadium anytime in the near future. All right, let's hear from Bacon Wrapped Wiener.
I have never been one to go to the Cards games. I've never liked driving downtown. In Kansas City, we didn't have to drive that far. It was just out in the middle of a field right off the highway. So downtown's never been a cool thing for me. I also have a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Don't like taking them down there anyway. I do enjoy Cards games, but I've never attended. So it's like them not playing well hasn't been the thing. I love baseball. I live in St. Louis because of baseball. Got a college scholarship here, and I never left. The Cards playing the way they are is making me think about maybe spending some money.
I get that.
Yeah.
This is a fun team, man. We were talking about this before the show. We didn't end up getting to it in the 11 o'clock hour the way that we had planned to, but I saw a piece from Lynn Worthy today on Victor Scott and how he's like using the past to dictate his future. And he talked about how like he studies Ichiro Suzuki and he studies like all of the like Rod Carew and basically all the best hitters that you remember either from your childhood or from yesteryear. And Lynn asked him, like, why do you do that? Why are you studying those guys? It's not something you hear a whole lot about in the modern game, right? More people are just concerned about themselves, their own biomechanics, how their swing path works. They're chasing numbers instead of chasing history. And for Victor Scott, he explained, like, these are the guys that did it. I want to learn from them. I want to see how they did it so well. And sure, yes, I also am incorporating some of the stuff with Brant Brown, but I want to be the modern day version of these guys. So clearly they were doing something correct. And as I was reading that, I was like, man, this mindset is why Victor Scott is going to be a fan favorite. Like that's the kind of stuff that plays here. And his style of baseball, excellent defense, puts the ball in play, just an absolute menace on the base paths. All of that stuff is going to make him into somebody that Cardinals fans, like it almost will they'll appreciate him in a way that his performance dictates, don't get me wrong, but it might even go above and beyond what the numbers on the back of the baseball card would suggest. He'll be one of those guys that if things go according to plan, he'll come back here to St. Louis 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and he'll get that massive ovation when he's announced, and people around the stadium will say, that guy was unbelievable to watch. He was so much fun, and he had this great personality. So I focus on Victor Scott because he's one of these guys. He's not alone in that regard. This is just a fun team with a lot of really interesting individuals on it that are playing the game the right way.
And I think it's the first time in how long that we've seen that it's both, to your point, a young, fun team, but also has some pretty good personalities, right? Like I think back to the most recent team that was pretty good. Look, that 22 team was really good. Paul Goldschmidt, great player. Honestly, loved watching him play baseball. He didn't have a personality. He was more of the business button-up type of, hey, I'm here to do my job, and I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to be really freaking good at it. Same with kind of Nolan Arenado was kind of that to an extent. He was a little bit fiery on the baseball field. I don't know if I'd say he had like a fiery personality that you saw behind the scenes, like when we would go into the clubhouse and enter for our post-game interviews.
I think his teammates see that more than we see that as fans or media.
And like, I don't know when the last time they had a team like that, right? I can't think of one in my lifetime that's been that way. Like those teams that were fun with Albert. Albert wasn't a good personality with the media in his prime.
I think those teams, I don't think it was the stars, but I think a lot of the complementary pieces were really good personality-wise. Like you look back at 2011, a lot of the complementary pieces, that Memphis Mafia, all of them, they had pretty significant personalities.
That's fair. I think that's fair. But like none of those guys, like I guess what I'm getting to is like none of those guys were even the face of the franchise then still, right? And like what you're talking about, like I think there is a legitimate shot that Victor Scott becomes that, Mason Wynn becomes that in this next wave of Cardinals baseball. Even Nootbaar, to an extent, I think can potentially become that.
Yeah, I would also add like the best player isn't always the face of the franchise.
You thinking of Adam Lowry?
Sure. I do think there are times where a guy can become almost the spokesperson for the team without being the best guy on that team. So maybe Victor Scott becomes that. It's entirely possible. Victor Scott's like a slightly above league average hitter, and yet he's one of the people that you most want to hear from for the team. Same thing is true for Mason Wynn, right? Like Ivan Herrera might be the best player on this team, and he's probably not going to be the guy that you hear the most from. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Paul Goldschmidt was that guy, right? Like you would hear from him sometimes. He's more than willing to talk. He just didn't really say a whole lot when he talked. That was his way of operating. That's the way that he went about it. He was more business-like. All right, let's go back out to the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. Let's hear from Lisan if she's more willing to go to the ballpark now.
Hey, guys. So can't go this weekend because it's just a busy weekend, but I'm paying attention more than I thought I would be, so that's a good thing. But they've lost 3 or 4. They can't pee down their leg this weekend. Otherwise, it's just a nice 2.5-week run. And didn't they have that in 2023, too? A nice little run in May? Mm-hmm. But anyway, so hopefully they play well this weekend, and attendance just keeps going up. So there you go. And it's about winning. It's not about any other thing. It's not about a free hot dog. It's not about this. It's not about that. All that other stuff's been the same. When you're winning, people will go.
They had a little bit of a run in 2024. They did not have a run in 23. 23, it was just things cratered. It was over. Yeah. There was never a way to get back into that. In 24, last season, though, they did play really well for like a 2-week stretch in late May. They were 15-24, and then they were suddenly 27-27. So they ended up going, what was that, 12-3 over that stretch of 15 games. And then they basically just like hovered around 500 the rest of the way. So it wasn't like I don't think it was quite as extended of a run as this has been. They also did not put themselves into the same hole this year that they had a year ago. I do agree with Lisa, though. You can't just allow for that to be the run, and now suddenly you revert back to, okay, we're going to be, hovering around 500 the rest of the way. You've got to create some momentum again. You can't allow all of that to escape, like the air goes out of the balloon. You played really well in that series against Detroit, and you only won 1 out of the 3. I'm okay with that. I've got no issues with it. You've lost 3 of your last 4 games, and I don't feel any worse about the Cardinals right now than I did a week ago. But if that starts to snowball on itself, and now you see them against Arizona, and Arizona gets hot, and then you see them go on the road against Baltimore and Texas, and suddenly the Cardinals' road woes continue, and they lose 4 out of 6 there, that's when you will start to see Cardinals fans, I think, say, all right, well, they had their nice run. It was fun while it lasted. Still a young team. Get ready for July 31st when the Cardinals get ready to sell things off.
Yeah, I agree they can't have a moment like that, but I'll say this. I think already by about this point, I got to double check and see what the date is. Yeah. So I go back to that 2023 team. They had that awful first month. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point you could see, okay, even if they did go on a run, you know what the low part of that team is, right? And that was such a low part where it says like the median is going to be, they're probably just not a good baseball team. I go back to 2024, and sure, they had that stretch that got them to 500. How are you supposed to wipe away the sour taste of dropping 2 of 3 at home to the Chicago White Sox, who at that point had 6 wins. So when they beat you twice and took 2 or 3, 25% of their wins, they were 8-26 after that series, were them beating you on your turf.
And that was Alex's perspective, right? I remember talking about this with Alex, and because we had gotten to that point where they were playing better baseball. And I was like, Alex, they're playing better baseball. Why aren't you buying into this at all? And he's like, I saw them against the White Sox. This team's not for real. Like this is all a mirage. None of this is going to really matter. Like this team can't do anything meaningful because I saw them against Chicago. You can't take that away from me. And then later on, we saw them also split a series against Colorado. So you had those 2 series where it's like, okay, the worst teams in the league, you can't even take advantage of what's on your schedule right now. Meanwhile, this year, not only are they taking care of what's on their schedule with the worst teams in the league, they're also splitting series or beating the best teams that are on their schedule. Yeah. So I do think it's very different than a year ago.
And the reason I brought that up is they really haven't had that series yet. Now, you can argue the Angels series where they dropped 2 or 3, but 2 of those 3 games came in extra innings.
I think it was Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was the closest thing we've seen to that. Pittsburgh on the road, when they lost that game in 13 innings, there were questionable decisions at times that were made in that game. Whether you think they were right or wrong, I think there were at least fair questions about the way that they handled that game. The offense went cold, and it was like, oh, here we go again. That, to me, was potentially going to be that series. I don't think it has aged that way.
Yeah, and I think the reason that I felt different about that series was their issues, and I said this at the time coming off that Pittsburgh series, was they felt fixable, right? It was really like 2 bullpen spots. Correct. It was Roycroft at the time and Fernandez at the time. And I guess you could argue they were kind of working through stuff with JoJo, but they seem to have fixed JoJo. So, like, that's not a problem. That feels fixable. It's a whole different story when, like, 23, you look at their pitching staff when they had that first bad month. And we talked with Brad Ausmus, a team in Detroit that did that, or Houston maybe. I don't remember which team he was on.
It was Houston.
And he said, well, we got to have good pitching to go on that run. And we all looked at each other and went, well, okay, we don't have that, so that's probably not going to happen. That 24 team, that White Sox series, you get shut down by the Chicago White Sox. Your offense doesn't do anything, which had been a theme for them for really the first month and a half at that point. That stuff doesn't feel like it's – that stuff feels like it's – okay, that doesn't feel fixable. There are issues in these first couple series that we just pointed to were issues. Like, they were fixable issues because a bullpen can be fixed in season. The Red Sox series, though, like, Red Sox were the better team, and I still think are going to win the East, and it was the bullpen. And then the Mets, who they just blew you out. They're a really good baseball team, right? That's going to happen when you go up against a really good baseball team. Sometimes they are going to complete a sweep.
Yeah, they just shut you down with their pitching, and their pitching has been great all year. That was not an exception to the rule. All right, let's hear from Nick via the Mic Drop feature on the 101 ESPN app.
I don't live in the St. Louis area, so I have to go an hour and a half plus to get to the games. If I was around the city more, I would go to games, as many as I can, maybe not get season tickets, but just go to a ton. Because the atmospheres of games, I like to eat good, drink good. Yeah, you're spending money. The tickets aren't expensive, though. And they really haven't over the years for the Cardinals. And I feel like that's for a reason, of course, what they do. But also, I don't know, they put on a great show there. Especially if the team is playing well, people should show up to the games.
I think so, too. I mean, you can spend your money however you want. Right, like if you don't want to go to games, don't go to the games. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. But if you're somebody that is inclined to do so, if you got the money to do so, and you're like, I'm looking for something to do tonight, I think going to the Cardinals game is back on board, right? Maybe previously you were going out for dinner with your wife, your husband, significant other, maybe your kiddos, whatever it was that you were doing previously. I think now the Cardinals have earned the opportunity, based on their performance, to be included back into that. Hey, and on some Friday nights, we're going to go down to the ballpark. We're going to go see what it's like to see the Cardinals versus the Diamondbacks. We'll go up to the right field terrace, Budweiser Terrace, and we'll drink $5 Busch Light all game long. Or we'll get the $6 margaritas, the $5 hot dogs. I will say this, I'm not caping for the Cardinals. If you're mad at the Cardinals for the way that they've approached things over the last decade, dude, we have spent more than enough time talking about how mad we've been with the Cardinals for the last decade. But one thing that I do think they deserve some credit for, they make it, relatively speaking, compared to other ballparks, relatively speaking, pretty affordable to go see a game. Now, if you want to park close, yes, it's going to cost you. We'll say parking's a little cheaper this year. That's one of the benefits of there not being as many fans going out to the games as there used to be. It's a little cheaper. But you can technically park for free on the streets, especially at night or the weekend. You can bring food, your own food. I don't know if some people are aware of this, but You can bring a cooler into the stadium and you could like have your food for your kids. You don't have to buy a hot dog for $12 or a hamburger for $17 or whatever. You can bring a PB&J for the kiddos. Boom, you're good to go. You can do those things to make it even more affordable. Like I'm not to give a free plug, but I'm on SeatGeek right now. Including fees tonight, you can get in for $19 if you want to.
And you'll probably be able to move down.
$20 a seat. It's a pretty darn affordable night to go out there, hang out with the family, go watch 3 hours of the Cards game. You can make it an affordable experience if you want to. If you flat out don't want to go to the Cardinals games, totally cool. It's fine by me. But I do think sometimes there is the explanation given of, it's just too expensive. It can be. It can be really expensive if you want it to be. You can also make it into an affordable night with the family.
I'll say this, my biggest takeaway from Nick's mic drop, he sounds like a great time at a Cardinals game. Eat good, drink good? Hell yeah, Nick. You do you.
He's Tanner. That is Bradford. I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Somebody also asked on the text line, BK, where are the $5 Busch Lights in the stadium? Is that real? We're going to be going to many more games if so. Absolutely. The right field terrace, it used to be like, I think it was an hour before first pitch you could get the $5 beers. Now it is the entire game on Friday nights. During the game, Friday nights, it's $5 beers, $6 margaritas, and $5 hot dogs up there. It's the one area. It's all the way up. So it's a little bit of a trek. But if you go all the way up to the top in right field, it's like the open seating area up there. You can just sit at the bar if you want to. But yeah, it's $5 beer on Friday nights. It's, in my opinion, one of the best deals that they've done in my time being here in St. Louis. Coming up next, it's time for the junk drawer here in BK and Ferrario.
Open up your 101 mobile app for your chance to win free tickets to Luke Bryan.
WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
All right, I'm taking a real risk to go out there and say what I'm about to say, T-Bone, because I know there are probably people in our audience that if I talk about this the wrong way, I will immediately be shunned from their lives.
Oh, boy.
I think I might be ready to adopt Star Wars into my life.
Oh.
We've been watching Andor, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely incredible. Everything about the show is well done. The writing is great. The acting is fantastic. The visuals are stunning throughout. Some of the scenes, you told me to keep an eye on one scene in particular. I'm not going to mention exactly what it is because it's a pretty significant plot that if you have not seen the show just yet, I'm giving away a lot for the show. It was unbelievable. Now, here's my fear. T-Bone, I think I might have missed the boat because I will be open and honest right now. I think I've seen 2 of the original Star Wars movies in my life. Just 2 of them.
When you say original, the original 3
6.
or the original 6?
The original 6.
George Lucas films.
Yeah. I've only seen, I think, 2 of them. At one point, I think I had Rogue One on. I can't tell you how much of it I've actually watched.
Rogue One's really good.
Am I too late?
Oh, no.
Am I getting in on this at a point in my life where I will not fully appreciate it? Or can I still get in and stuff has stood the test of time and I will enjoy it the way that I am currently enjoying watching Andor?
I think you will enjoy it. I think they still... I saw... Bill Simmons, you love his podcast, right? I just saw it, and I don't know why it popped up on one of my, I think it was like my Instagram feed. I saw him just say he went back and rewatched when you said original, this is what I was thinking, 4 through 6, because those were the first ones that were released. Sorry, getting emotional about it. But he said, I didn't think they would hold up well. But then he said he went back and rewatched them and he said they still hold up. So okay. I think you're good. I almost would say start with that because if you start with episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I'm sorry, that movie's terrible. Okay? Like, you have to watch it to just so you can get through the 6. That one's awful.
That double lightsaber battle, though, with Darth Maul, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, the final battle, cool. Everything before that sucks.
BK, the fact that you just completed or you're watching Andor as well.
Yeah, we've got,
mandates.
I think, 1 more episode left.
So you have to go back to Rogue One. You have to circle back and see how it all ties together.
Sure.
The prequels definitely get a lot of criticism for good reason, but there's a lot of pretty good content on the service, period. And
is there a specific way that I need to watch this? Like, do I need to watch a show before I go back and watch the prequels and then watch the...
So because you've started on Andor, because that's really your first Star Wars full-in experience, the way I would do it is because you basically are starting with the kind of a prequel from what they did. Mm-hmm. You've watched Andor. Have you finished it, or you still have a couple episodes?
We have like 1, maybe 2 episodes left. I got to go back.
So when it ends, it basically leads to how Rogue One starts. I mean, like right as Rogue One starts is basically how it ends. So I would watch Andor, watch Rogue One, and then Rogue One ends basically how Episode 4 begins in Star Wars. That's how I would do it, right? And then you can go back and enjoy the prequel sequence like everybody else did.
And then do The Mandalorian for Luca, if for no other reason. Wait until you get to the Ewoks. Oh, my goodness. Return of the Jedi style?
Enjoy the Ewoks.
Oh, the Ewoks? Get a bad rap.
All right, we're in. Kara said we got to watch Rogue One next, so we will go ahead and do that. I will report back on how things go. I know Ryder's probably going to be talking my ear off here in a second on what exactly I need to do as we continue to dive into the Star Wars universe. One of my best friends is like a huge Star Wars nerd, and it's been like a friction point in our relationship that I've never been interested in it. It's not like I hate it or anything like that, just never got into it. I think it's time. As a 32-year-old man, now it is time for me to officially jump aboard the Star Wars train 60 years after everybody else did. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, can the Blues keep Sunny and Faksa in the lineup and still take a step forward? I want to discuss that. The Fast Lane did it yesterday. I want to give our thoughts on that coming up in about 15 minutes. But next, I don't think we're overstating things when we talk about just how much of a step forward the young hitters have had for the Cardinals. Now there's proof by a numbers nerd. We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Text us anytime at 314-399-9646 on the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation text line on 101 ESPN. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside T-Bone and Bradford, I'm BK. Alex off today. He'll be back in with us on Tuesday, an extended weekend for him. T-Bone, I was reading that nerdy number site earlier today, fangraphs.com. Some of you may enjoy the site. Many of you probably hate it. However, they wrote something kind about your Cardinals today. They looked at who has improved their projections for next year the most based on what they have done so far through the first 50 games of the season. A guy that we're going to see this weekend here in St. Louis, Geraldo Perdomo. He is their shortstop for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's been quite good this year, especially offensively. He's always been good with his glove. Well, he's one of the players that has changed their expectations for next year the most already based on what they've done the first 50 games. They have about 20 names here on the most improved players list. And I'm talking about just on the hitting side of things. The following Cardinals are a part of that. Victor Scott II. There is also Lars Nootbaar. And maybe most notably, the guy that has improved his stock the most heading into next season, Ivan Herrera. Ivan Herrera, going into the year, had a 2026 projection of like 7% above league average offensively. That has since been boosted to 30% above league average for next year. He has gone from, yeah, this guy might be a decent hitter. If he sticks behind the plate, like, yeah, a really solid all-around everyday player. To, whoa, okay, all-star potential. If he's only a DH, you find a way to get him into your lineup every day. That's how good the bat is playing right now, and that's how good they're expecting it to play moving forward. Now, these projections are based on, performance right now. It's based on batted ball data, all of those different things. I wanted to bring this up, T-Bone, because I think sometimes, I'll speak for myself, I can fall victim to, I'm watching this every day, I get overly excited, sign everybody long-term, all-stars all over the diamond, like this is going to be amazing. And when I have somebody that is a neutral observer, and they're just using an algorithm, this is just a model that they've got put together, and it is confirming what I am seeing with my own eyes, that's when I know, okay, I'm not overreacting here. What we have seen from Ivan Herrera, what we have seen from Victor Scott II and Lars Nootbaar in particular, but a lot of the young players overall, this is different, and it shows that there are signs of things to come for this Cardinals team with the young core. Yeah, it really does. I mean, and Herrera is the one that really stands out because you're right, 30% above league average. That is an all-star caliber player. I mean, look at what Brendan Donovan's done this year. He's 32% above league average right now. And we're talking about should he be in the all-star game, or actually trying to make the case for him getting to the all-star game. And then the one for Nootbaar, that's the one that, like, I would think if you're the Cardinals organization, it almost feels as like reassurance. Because remember, the Cardinals have always talked of Lars Nootbaar being a guy that could really be not just an analytics darling, but also be a guy that like produces on the field. Yeah. And really the thing that's held him back isn't anything with the batter profile. It's he's just not healthy and on the field. And you're seeing that finally start to happen for him this year. So they are almost getting reassurance on what they have been saying publicly. And then it's just really good to see Victor Scott do this because he's the one guy, if you ask me, okay, is he going to be able to sustain what he's done so far this season? Will just be 5% above league average, get on base 349 clip. He hits 275, doesn't have a ton of pop at 383. But if you told me, hey, the projection systems are saying this is something that he's probably going to not just continue, but to potentially get slightly better going into next season, I would say, okay, I feel a little bit better about that because he's the one that I just don't know what to think yet of, okay, is there regression coming for Victor Scott? Yeah. And it might, but he's the one guy that I look at and I go, okay, I still don't know what he is, but I am glad to hear that the projection systems are saying, hey, this guy is increasing what he looks like coming into 2026. And to be clear, they're still saying he's going to be a below average hitter. I'm not sure how much I buy that. I think what we're seeing is pretty real. I also don't know how much I care because what he brings elsewhere, if you've got a league average hitter, this is an everyday player that has the potential to be an all-star. Like that's what this is. If he's going to be a 40 stolen base guy with gold glove defense in center field, and then you add in league average hitter because of the lack of power, and maybe he grows into even more power as things go along. Dude, he's 24 years old. He's already adjusted to the big league level once. I have no reason to believe that he can't continue to do so as we go along here. So I'm not overly concerned about him. I like seeing backing from the national side of things beyond just us being in this every day. We feel our emotions are tied into this, like this is going to get better and better and better, and they clearly have something with this young core. No, nationally, people are also seeing something very similar, and the algorithm is even picking up on it. I did want to bring up one slight concern, I would say. Not even a concern. Something that I've noticed that I'm keeping an eye on when it comes to the offense. Bernie Miklas has brought this up as well, but I did a little research last night, T-Bone. The Cardinals have scored 5 or more runs 24 different times this year. Only 5 teams have done so more often. It's a heck of a place to be. Your offense, when it's on, dude, it's up there with the best in the sport. They produce big time when they get going. However, the Cardinals have also scored 1 or fewer runs, so 1 or 0, 13 different times this year. Again, only 5 other teams have produced 1 or fewer runs more often than the Cardinals this season. I don't feel watching them as though it has truly been an all or nothing offense. It does not feel that way to me as I'm watching these games. But the production says it very much has been that. In 37 of their 50 games, they've either scored 5+ or 1 or 0. That is a pretty wide range of what you expect on any given night. They have gone up against a ton of stud arms. That is some of the context that needs to be added in here. I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Is this something that we should be more concerned about? I don't know. Right now, I would lean no. I'm not worried about it ultimately because the at-bats, even in those games where they're scoring 1 or fewer runs, like over the weekend against the Royals, I don't think they played a bad game necessarily. They only scored a run. They ended up winning one of those games. And then the next one they lost 2-1. I don't feel terrible about it in the moment, but this last game against the Tigers, that was one of the first ones really all season long where I was like, they just weren't competitive. They did not look good against that bullpen game. What are your thoughts on this, T-Bone, that the gap, the delta, in the words of John Mozeliak, between 5+ runs or 1 or fewer?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about it because I am kind of chalking it up to what you had mentioned, that they have gone up against some really good arms. So that would be the thing that I look at and say, okay, that's why I think this is happening. And even that bullpen game, I think bullpen games, I think as we've learned, as we've seen them happen throughout the last couple of seasons for the Cardinals, they're really hard to plan for because you can't plan for one guy that you're going to see most of your at-bats against. It is just a constant rotating of arms. And if you think about it, in theory, they get the better matchup because they get to dictate the matchup consistently for 9 innings. So I don't read too much into it. But if it does continue and I start to see like performances where they go up against, I don't even know who the name would be, like I don't even think he's in the rotation anymore, but like a Taijuan Walker, for example, of Philadelphia, where you look at that guy and you go, okay, he's clearly a number 4. Yet he just shut down the lineup that I think is good, and they just scored 1 run and lost again. If that starts to happen 3, 4, 5 times and you start to see it consistently, that's when I'll start to raise some alarm bells.
All right, last thing that I wanted to get to before we talk about the Blues on the other side. Ken Rosenthal was on with foul territory today, and we talked about this in the opening hour today. Where are we at with the Cardinals? What do we think they're going to be? How sustainable is this? Whatever. Ken Rosenthal was asked about the Cardinals and what he thinks they're ultimately going to be at the deadline. He says, tied in as anybody in the business. Let's take a listen.
I expect that if they're in contention, this being Mozeliak's last year, as you mentioned, that they will buy. Now, are they going to expend assets to make a big run, go all in, so to speak? No, I can't see them doing that. I would expect that they make relatively minor moves. If they fall out of it, or if they are simply in a spot where they don't see their playoff odds as being very good, and like you said, the win projections are not where you would want them to be, yes, I could see them selling, but I really don't see that happening with them. To me, they're going to be buyers, but limited buyers, not giving up anything that's going to cost them too deeply for the future.
I think that's what my guess is on them, and I don't think most fans would be upset about that. Tell me if you disagree with this, T-Bone. I don't think there will be fans this year that are like, Cardinals should go all in. I'd be pretty surprised by that. I don't think I've seen that a single time on the text line so far this year, and I don't necessarily anticipate we will see that at any point going into the deadline. I do think the question going into the deadline will be, there will be some that are on the side of Cardinals have to sell no matter what. That's always what the season was about. And even if they're 10 games above 500 and 2 games up in the division, you have to sell. Ryan Helsley is worth too much. Steven Matz is potentially too valuable. Phil Maton is too good of a trade asset. You have to get the assets that are available to you at this year's deadline in order to set yourself up for the future. I think there will be some that find themselves in that category leading into this year's deadline. And I think the other side of that is either hold, just stay with what you got, or be a marginal buyer. Improve the bullpen with somebody. Go out there and get something that can fit into that like 7th inning mix. Or go out there and get a rotation player that is similar to a John Lester or Jordan Montgomery or Eric Fetty. Not going to break the bank, but somebody that can start a game 3 or a game 4 for you in a playoff series and you feel fine about the fact that they're out there. I think that's probably where this team is going to be. I agree with Ken Rosenthal on that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, I agree with you. I don't think anybody is clamoring that they need to push their chips in and be buyers, or be all in, because they're clearly not at that spot. I do think some of the fan base wouldn't mind if they did some marginal buying. Like, look what they did last year. I don't remember seeing a lot of people upset with their deadline last year because they were kind of in like the similar spot that what Ken Rosenthal was explaining there, where they moved on from a guy that hadn't played all year, Tommy Edman, and they acquired a starter that helped them and what we thought was going to help them in Tommy Pham. And he had a really cool moment where he pinch hit and hit a grand slam, and then he was gone in 3 weeks. But I don't think fans would be upset with that. I do think there will be a portion of the fan base, though, to where if you look at it, and I don't know if it's the playoff odds that they'll be looking at, or if it is they can just look at I'll say the wild card standing, that if you're 6 games back of the Cubs, let's say, and I don't know, 3 to 4 games back in that second wild card, and there are 2-3 teams ahead of you also that are also fighting for that last spot. If the Cardinals then are marginal buyers, then I do think there will be a portion of the fan base that will be frustrated.
Yeah, I think those are the people, though, that were always going to be frustrated.
I don't know. I think there will be some of the fan base that wouldn't have been frustrated that would say they should sell because it is best for the organization. They should sell a Ryan Helsley. And I think it just goes to Helsley is such a big asset, right? Sure. That they can move. Like, if they didn't have a Ryan Helsley, I don't think there'd be people that would, to your point, that would be on the outside looking in saying, well, I don't really care.
If they didn't have a Ryan Helsley, you're where the Blues were at the deadline. The Blues were not in a deadline situation where they should have expected to be playoff contenders. Like, the odds were not in their favor. Now, they went on this crazy run, and ultimately they made it, but the odds were not in the favor of the Blues, especially after losing Colton Parayko to make it to the playoffs. But the reality was, man, they just didn't have many guys that were on expiring contracts that were going to be valuable enough to push them to become sellers. If instead of being a multi-year player still under contract, if Braden Shin was a pending UFA, I wonder what they would have done. If he was a pending UFA and didn't have a no-trade clause, I wonder what they would have done. My guess, and this is purely a guess, is they would have sold. I think
agree.
They probably would have traded Braden Shin at the deadline because he was too valuable of an asset to not deal and to give up the potential for that return for like a 10% chance of making the playoffs just probably wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. I think Doug Armstrong has shown in the past he's willing to make those kinds of moves. That's what Mo has not shown, though. Mo has basically shown we are only selling if we have no shot. Because the one time we've seen a significant sell-off by the Cardinals was 2023, and they were totally out of it at that point in time. So it will be a very different perspective, or very different situation for him. He's also just not been in this situation coming into a season. All of this is foreign to him. So I'll be curious to see how they decide to go about this. I do think I personally lean in the direction that Ken Rosenthal was saying. I think they would like to be buyers, but they will adjust accordingly if the team forces them to do so. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to play a game of One's Gotta Go. You guys give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario. But next, can the Blues keep both Oscar Sundqvist and Radek Faksa in the lineup and still take a step forward next year? We'll talk about that here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
want to hear from you. Use the Scott Lee Mic Drop feature on the 101 mobile app. Give us your opinion on anything St. Louis sports with a mic drop.
Brought to you by the Scott Lee Heating Company.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
In my world, I don't see a world where they're both on the same roster. So whether that means Army does not re-sign Radek Faksa and Oscar Sundqvist slides down to be a part of that identity line, or whether it means Faksa's in and somewhere new for Oscar Sundqvist.
Love that conversation on the Fast Lane yesterday with Tanner and Bradford on BK. Wanted to give our thoughts on it. So Oscar Sundqvist is under contract next year at $1.5 million. You also have potential extra forwards already under contract for the Blues with Texier and Joseph. Those three players are slated to make a combined $6.5 million next season for the St. Louis Blues. They're all guaranteed contracts. They're here. They're ready to go unless the Blues decide to make a move with one of them this offseason. So, T-Bone, I like the way they presented this. The question that they had on the Fast Lane, can the Blues keep Sunny and Faksa in the lineup next year and take a step forward? My answer is no. Like a definitive no. You can't expect to take a step forward that way. Now, can the Blues keep Sunny and Faksa on the roster and take a step forward? Sure. But one of them will very likely have to be in the press box more often than not. I think that's the way that you improve. And really, it becomes a question of how much was the fourth line success due to Radek Faksa versus how much of that can Oscar Sundqvist replicate if you drop him from the third line to the fourth line. I know everybody in the moment was like, man, Faksa's the guy. You cannot possibly move on from that. And I would be in favor of them re-signing Faksa if it's on a cheap deal, he wants to stick around, and you can make it work roster-wise. But if you told me, T-Bone, hey, Oscar Sundqvist is going to drop down, he'll be the fourth line center, and they go out and acquire a middle six center that upgrades from what Sunny was a year ago, I think that's the best way, the easiest way, the most logical way for them to improve the every night roster heading into 2025. I know that means Faksa leaves, but eventually you've got to make tough decisions, and that's the clearest path forward for them. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see where you're getting that 5% increase. That's the number they keep throwing out there of, hey, everybody's got to be 5% better. We want to improve 5% as a team. I don't know how you're doing that with both Sunny and Faksa in the lineup, right? Like we've talked about it, you can't have your third line center producing at 20 points. And I don't think Sundqvist is capable of doing much better than that at this point in his career. And then the same can be said for Faksa, right? 15 points from your fourth line center, that's a solid number to have. But I don't think you're going to be asking for much more from him either if you did re-sign him and put him in the lineup at the same time. So I agree with you. I think if you're looking to improve, you can't have both of those guys in the lineup. Both on the roster, sure, I'm with you there. But you really need, whether it be Braden Shen takes over that third line center and you sign a second line center to help improve you, and you keep Sundqvist, or you got Fox in that center on the fourth line, that's the way you improve this team. You've got to upgrade from either the second or third line, depending on how you view Braden Shen. That's the spot where you have to upgrade. That way you can bump Sundqvist down. If I was to argue the other side, the upgrade comes from Snuggerud effectively replacing the Texier/Joseph spot in your lineup. Like that would be the replacement. And yes, I do think that makes you better. Like I think the Blues, as currently constructed, will be a better team than they were this past year. It's also worth acknowledging this past year they needed like a franchise-altering winning streak in order to get into the playoffs. So you're not just trying to be better than that. You're trying to improve to the point where you are like top 3 in your division, and the other teams in your division are also anticipating improving, especially Minnesota, who we just talked about potentially being the most aggressive team in the league when it comes to adding a center. So I do think they will improve just as they currently are because of Snuggerud's presence as a regular season team. Because you'll have Holloway back in, probably Neighbors drops down to that third line. So you'd have Neighbors, Sunny, Bolduc, Snuggerud potentially on that top line, and then Kyrou, Shin, and Holloway back into the lineup. Can I counter that? And this isn't a counter to be negative on the St. Louis Blues, because I agree. Sure, Jimmy Snuggerud, I expect in the full season you're going to get better numbers. That might be that 5% increase.
I also think it's fair to wonder, okay, there's probably going to be a 5% decrease from somebody on the roster because I think everything went right for the Blues last year, right? You said maybe outside of Pavel Buchnevich. I think you probably wanted more from Pavel Buchnevich. But outside of that, that's fair. But outside of that, like, Kyrou ended up, like, you couldn't ask for maybe a better season from Jordan Kyrou.
70 points?
I think last year you got to where you wanted him to be, I would say. And I mean probably on the defensive side more than anything.
Yeah, I think there's still more there.
I think Braden Shen, we didn't think that was possible from Braden Shen. And I think that could be a one-hit wonder potentially. What I mean by that is I don't know if he's going to remain at this level of play.
Yeah, I would disagree with you. I think Robert Thomas still has more to give. He missed a month of the season, or missed a few weeks of the season, then wasn't the same for about a month over the course of the year. Dylan Holloway ended up missing the very final portion of the season, but he was a different dude under Monty. The first 2 months, he wasn't that guy. I think he could just be more of what he was the rest of the season. I think Kyrou has more to give points-wise, mostly from an assist perspective. I don't know that he has more than 36 goals in him. I think Buch there's a lot more in Pavel Buchnevich than what we saw last year. I think Cam Fowler, instead of getting 50 games out of him, you get 80, hopefully, out of him this upcoming season. I think Broberg might have a little bit more to give this year. I certainly think Snuggerud has more to give than what you saw from 7 games in him. I would disagree. I do think this team has a lot more to give from some of these guys. And I think there were times early on in the season where the goaltending had more to offer than what they were providing for you early on.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't feel that way. There are some guys I agree with you, but like Kyrou, I don't know if I'm there. I think 70 to 75 points is about where he's going to be typically on a season. So maybe that's the biggest one that I would push back on. And like Thomas, sure, I think there's more to give. I don't know if he's going to be a 100-point guy. I think he's going to be 82 to 90. I think he's going to be slightly above point per game. I just know, and maybe that's a little unfair to say, I didn't feel like there was multiple guys that I'll say one guy that I really looked at and said, boy, that was a really disappointing season outside of Brandon Saw. That was the one that had the big trickle down. And Buch, and some people would argue it was either he wasn't healthy or Bannister had him playing center. Okay, so what's it look like a full year on the wing? I just don't feel like if you just said, hey, we have Jimmy Snuggerud, that is enough to make up for if we carried Sundqvist and Faksa and ran it back with that group. I don't think that would be enough from Jimmy Snuggerud.
I agree. That was my original statement. I totally agree with you there. I don't think they should do that. I think that would be a mistake. What I'm saying is I do think internally they can expect some improvements. And also, if you get some of those improvements and add a significant piece, because there's really one roster spot to work with here. That's it. And that roster spot is what Radek Faksa used to be in. So if you don't bring in Faksa and you replace him with Brock Nelson or Sam Bennett or one of the other players that you could go out there and acquire via either free agency or some kind of a trade, yeah, I think this team would be in a really good spot, but it's pretty clogged up right now for 2025. Beyond that, you're in a good spot. But for 2025, if you're not going to send out an asset with Joseph or with Texier, and this team doesn't really have assets to send out right now, draft pick-wise, I think this is pretty much what you've got outside of one addition, probably down the middle at the center position. I would be looking to go out there and do that. So if that means Faksa's not back, it means Faksa's not back, man. I'd like to see him back, but sometimes you have to face reality. He's probably on the back burner until they decide what they're going to do in that middle 6 center position. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. If you guys want to do so, one's got to go coming up next. You guys give us 4 scenarios. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario.
Tomorrow, Red Sox and Orioles. Pregame at 2:30. First pitch at 3:10. The MLB plays on 101 ESPN. The return of the Dotem Golf Tournament with the morning after is happening next Thursday and Friday at Oak Valley Golf Course and Resort. Presented by Michelob Ultra. Get your foursome together for a full day out on the course with TMA, including complimentary breakfast from Donut Drive-In, lunch from Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, or your Michelob Ultra, the 100 West Dental closest to the pin competition, a long drive contest courtesy of Pondoff's Anonymous Recovery Podcast, and an after party with food from Texas Roadhouse on Thursday and Super Smokers Barbecue on Friday. A portion of the proceeds will go to support the St. Louis Hero Network in honor of Brian McKenna. Friday's foursomes are already sold out, and remaining spots for Thursday are filling up fast. Find all the Dotem info now at 101ESPN.com. Brought to you by Michelob Ultra, Superior Light Beer. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
D-backs slither into town. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. After suffering 2 consecutive losses against AL best Detroit, St. Louis will host a solid squad from the desert tonight. Cardinals Diamondbacks opener unfolding at 7:15 as Miles Michaelis and Zach Gallen lock horns. Ali Marmol's team still occupies second place standings-wise, which helps explain Victor Scott II's confidence.
Everybody's extremely confident in their abilities and what they bring to the table. So some days we don't put it together, and that's okay. But most days we will. So I mean, I feel like it's just a matter of everybody clicking on all cylinders, and we start stringing together more wins and more wins.
Speaking of wins, those Battlehawks target their 5th straight. This evening's opponent, San Antonio. Your Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet, plus a Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You guys give us 4 different options. We will tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario. All right, let's start out with this one, T-Bone. One's got to go in terms of you would part with this guy when the Cardinals are buyers at the deadline edition. Chase Davis, Jimmy Crooks, TK Roby, or I've got to add in one more. They only gave us 3 options here. Who's another one? Let's go Michael McGreevy. Chase Davis, Jimmy Crooks, TK Roby, or Michael McGreevy. Which one's got to go?
I think the one I would part with there's probably Chase Davis, and that's probably not a popular.
He's heating up.
He is heating up, and he seems to be kind of starting to figure things out. But I don't want to part with the starting pitching depth there, and I still kind of am in on TK Roby. We'll see how he develops this year. I'm definitely not moving on from McGreevy because that guy's in your rotation next year, if not post All-Star break potentially. And they talk about Jimmy Crooks potentially having some offensive ceiling, so I would keep Jimmy Crooks because he might be the catcher of the future. Then Pages is probably your backup because I don't think Herrera's going back behind the plate at the end of this season. So I would say the one I'm willing to move on from there is Chase Davis.
Chase Davis had a huge series against the Amarillo Sod Poodles.
You just wanted to say Sod Poodles, didn't you?
Oh, wow.
Big
I think
series.
That's the team, if I'm not mistaken, that might be the team Chip's sons cover, if I'm not mistaken.
They're the Arizona Diamondbacks AA team.
Nothing better than a minor league name.
No kidding.
Nickname at that. Tough one, guys. I think in this instance, Tanner, I'm going to side with you barely. It came down to Davis or Crooks for me. I do like the offensive potential there for the latter, and it does come down to that determination, whether you're talking about what you have seen, what you have been able to benefit from so far, and I think that McGreevy can provide that for you in the rotation moving forward in spades, so just barely give me Davis.
I think I'd go Crooks because they have 1,000 catchers in the system. That's it. Like, it's just that simple. They have so many different catchers that are options. Now, if they decide Jimmy Crooks is their favorite of the bunch, then don't trade Jimmy Crooks. But for me, as somebody that knows, a minimal amount compared to the people within the organization, my perspective on this is, dude, you have like 7 different catchers that you're comfortable with. Trade one of them. So if Jimmy Crooks ends up being that guy, I think I would understand it from their perspective. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for One's Gotta Go. One's Gotta Go. Hot dog, wings, burger, or a pulled pork sandwich. Basically Memorial Day options for you out as you're hanging out by the pool. Hot dog, wings, burger, or pulled pork sandwich. Which one's got to go?
I don't know why. I would say wings here. And I like wings. For some reason, I don't think Memorial Day with wings. Like, I think hot dog, burger, pulled pork I would throw in there for Memorial Day. I don't know why. For wings, I think more like Sundays watching football, not Memorial Day.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's been a weird career arc for me when it comes to wings, actually. Not a huge fan.
You have a career arc?
I was going to say career arc. That's a weird word choice, but I'm in.
Over the last few years, I've become a little more enamored, with those. But if you're talking about Memorial Day, you're talking about hopefully trying to get outside, and you're getting after it, you have to go with the staples for me. Give me those hot dogs. Give me those burgers. Absolutely. There is nothing better than the pulled pork.
To me, it's clearly hot dog. Now, if this was some kind of a sausage, a brat, for example, I would have not gone that direction. But a traditional hot dog, I'm fine. I'll go with any of the other options over having that hot dog.
There's nothing better than watching baseball Memorial Day. You've got your hot dog with ketchup, mustard, relish. Ooh.
Yeah, I love those booty holes and eyelids. Those are great inside of my hot dog.
When you think of it like that, yeah, sure.
I mean, listen.
Watching the birds at Camden, right? Yeah.
All right, one's got to go. Seafood edition. Shrimp, scallops, lobster, or crab legs.
What aren't scallops like what they pull off like the side of a boat or something?
You never had a scallop before?
No.
Okay.
I've had shrimp, crab I like. What was the other one?
Lobster.
I would try lobster. I'd get rid of scallops.
I love scallops.
Can we dump the entire array here?
Oh, not a
I
seafood
have to
guy.
say no, not
a shellfish guy specifically.
No, not since middle school. We had a banned toilet paper drive, gentlemen, because at what point would you rather ingest seafood or give it to the kids who are helping than on a ridiculous 95-degree day and trying to consume as much? So first things first, let's just say shrimp and, well, pretty much everything. Get it out.
Okay. For me, I'd probably go lobster. I'm not a big lobster guy. It's the most expensive of the bunch, and it just doesn't do a whole lot for me.
I don't know if I've ever had lobster, but how can it be bad? You just douse this stuff in butter.
It's fine, but I just prefer the other options. Like shrimp, I think you can have in more different scenarios. Like you could have a shrimp cocktail at a Super Bowl party, for example, right? Crab legs, typically, that's only a situation for us like during a holiday. Generally speaking, for like Christmas, maybe you'd have that as some kind of a celebration. But lobster's just not something that's ever been a big part of our life, so I'll go ahead and go with that.
You went on a big trip a year ago, 2 years ago, out east. Did you do a lot of seafood when you were out in Boston?
In Boston, we did a little bit. Mostly, we went up to Maine. Like, we went all the way up the coast. We started in New York, and then we went up to Rhode Island, Boston, and eventually Portland, Maine. Now, lobster rolls. If I lived in Maine, I'm keeping lobster because a lobster roll is fantastic. You go over to Peacemaker, you have yourself a little bit of the lobster roll over there. All right, now we're living good. It's just not something I do a whole lot of. I eat the others probably more often than I would eat lobster. But yes, lobster in Maine is fantastic. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Got to Go. One's Gotta Go, GM's Locally Edition. Mo, Army, or Lutz? I think right now you'd probably have to say Lutz.
Yeah, I would say Lutz because, I mean, look at their fall from grace. I mean, they were the best team in the Western Conference in their first year, collapsed down the stretch of that season, and then he started selling off pieces. It led to a rough year last year, fired Cardinals. I mean, his hiring of the coach now in Melberg, I don't even know if it's necessarily a Melberg thing, but, like, it does not look pretty right now. They're winless, and I think it's 11 straight now. I would say it's Lutz. He's the one for me.
It's Lutz in a runaway at present. Right now, over the last couple of weeks, have you noticed anything different as far as I know the overall results, Tanner, haven't exactly been glowing, but at least putting the ball in, on occasion, in the back of the net?
No, they stink at everything.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. Last one here. One's got to go for Memorial Day weekend drink edition. A beer, a seltzer, a wine, or shots?
Well, I'm not getting her shots because I'm in on a good time.
What's your typical go-to? Like, if you're going to a bar and you're going to get shots with a friend, what would you typically ask to be poured? I just go house tequila. Let's go.
I think that's what I would do as well. Because you said at a bar, I was thinking Jello shots, but I wouldn't do that. That's not really a bar thing.
Only place that I would do that is at Double D's, and R.I.P. to Double D's.
I'd probably do like you said, house tequila. That would probably be mine. I think I would I'm not a big wine guy, but there's some that I like. I would get rid of seltzers. I can't do seltzers, man. I don't know what it is. I've tried them. I've tried all different brands, different types, just to see if I can find one I like. Just like wine. I don't like a lot of them. There's a handful I like. I can't do it, man. I'm out on the seltzers.
I'd get rid of shots for Memorial Day weekend specifically. I'm probably not hammering shots while I'm sitting out at a pool with the family, getting ready to just hang out with my son. That's probably not my go-to. I know that may be a surprise to some because people think that I exclusively drink whenever I'm around my son. Not the case. Beer, seltzer, wine, I could do any of those. Shots, probably not so much. A pour of whiskey, maybe. A bunch of shots, not good.
It may not be the Memorial Day special, but that wine has to stay. A little bit of sunset red as you segue into the evening, no doubt about it. So the beer.
Wait, hold on. Are you a big wine guy?
Are you talking about the bag of a red wine?
Huh? Oh,
a bagged wine? Is that what we're going with here?
Just one bottle, a picturesque scenic landscape out there. You're admiring it from afar.
Boy, Bradford sounds like he's enjoying Memorial Day compared to me just let's party. Bradford's really
sounds like he is out in the Sonoma Valley or
got
something.
A good book with you?
Well, Franklin County is otherwise known as exactly that. Yes.
Heard that about down there. All right, coming up next, we'll hit the rewind, finish this thing off here on BK and Ferrario.
Open up your 101 mobile app for your chance to win free tickets to see El Monstero and Blue Oyster Cult. Performing Saturday night, August 2nd at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Find all the ticket details and find that chance to score free tickets for El Monstero and Blue Oyster Cult
Back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to download. Super easy to use. It's sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. If you want to go over there or on YouTube, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. That's where you can find yesterday's edition of the Redbird Report. It is still very fresh because the Cardinals have not played a game since we recorded that. So you can check that out again over on YouTube, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. That's where you can see us in the very cool set that they have provided for us here at 101 ESPN. So check that out over there again. The Redbird Report latest episode is out. You can also, if you just want to listen to it as a podcast, you can certainly do that as well. 101ESPN.com is the place to do so. The latest edition of the Spread Zone is out as well. You can find that over on the YouTube page. They gave all of their picks for this weekend's Indy 500. And if you want to listen to the Last Minute Blues podcast, they talked a lot about Jordan Kyrou, Sam Bennett, what this offseason is going to look like for the Blues, and started to talk a little bit about the Eastern and Western Conference Finals as well. Cardinals back in action this weekend, starting up tonight in St. Louis against the Arizona Diamondbacks. The D-backs in some ways, T-Bone, are a mirror image of the Cardinals in that they're just slightly above 500. They are a great offense. Ketel Marte has been playing like an MVP candidate when he's been healthy. Corbin Carroll has just flat out been an MVP candidate this season. They can't seem to pitch, though. Starting pitching has been okay. Bullpen has been a disaster for them for much of the season. This next stretch of 9 games really fits into this category. Teams that came into the season as legitimate playoff contenders after having made the playoffs in the last couple of seasons. Arizona, Baltimore, Texas. And none of them are living up to the expectations. Meanwhile, the Cardinals were the opposite. Team that came into the season with no expectations and looked like a playoff contender. What are you going to be watching for this weekend between the Cardinals and the D-backs?
Well, I'll be curious to see how your kind of pitch-to-contact approach works in this series because you mentioned their offense. It's a great offense, top 5 in most statistical categories, and you mentioned the names that are in it. Miles Michaelis goes tonight. Like, tonight will be a very good test. You know, I think this whole approach that they've got where they are more of a pitch-to-contact staff, but they've got an excellent defense, I think they can sustain their success. I think this series, though, might be one that can be a little bit telling, right? Detroit had a pretty good offense, and Detroit beat you 2 of 3. And we saw a little bit of the bad luck, if you want to call it that, go the Cardinals' way in that series. Will that continue? That is the number one thing that I am focused on. How does your pitch-to-contact staff go against such a great offense in this series? Are you able to slow them down, or is it going to be, okay, we're going to have to slug our way through these games because maybe this isn't sustainable?
I'll also be curious to see kind of what they do with the lineup this weekend. They have everybody available, and you're going to back right-handed pitchers. Is Burleson going to get some opportunities this weekend? What does that mean for Ivan Herrera? Will we see him behind the plate? You mentioned the speed that the Diamondbacks have on the base paths. This is not a great spot to put Ivan Herrera behind the plate, but it's probably the only way that you get Burleson extended playing time. So maybe you see one game with Ivan Herrera behind the plate, another game where Jordan Walker, maybe against Fott, for example, doesn't play in the outfield. And so that's how you get the 2 out of the 3 for Alec Burleson in this series. 1 game in right, 1 game at DH. I'll be interested to see kind of how they manipulate the lineup as well to get their best dudes in there consistently without, peeling back their defense too much, because that's been their calling card this year. They've been the best defensive team in Major League Baseball thus far.
Yeah, my expectation is that they will get Walker and Burleson 2 games apiece. And that means you put Herrera behind the plate for the one. The one matchup I think they're going to avoid with Walker, I'm speculating, is the Fott matchup. He's got a wipeout slider. That's not an ideal matchup for Jordan Walker. But like Merrill Kelly, who you'll see tomorrow, he's more fastball changeup. I think that might be a fine matchup. Zach Gallen, he does throw a slider, but it's not often. His best go-to strikeout pitch is a curveball. So I think those matchups, though they're not easy for Jordan Walker, I think he lines up better against those guys than he does Brandon Fott. So I expect Burleson gets to start maybe in right on Sunday, and then he DHs either tonight or tomorrow, and you put Herrera behind the plate for one of those games.
Yeah, I think that makes all the sense in the world. It's just that means you're putting Ivan Herrera behind the plate, which is going to take your defense down a little bit.
Okay.
And you're going to put Burley in right field for one of those games. And again, that also means that you're limiting what you're doing defensively. And this has been a team that this season, their calling card has been their defense, and their pitching is a pitch-to-contact staff, and you're going to have a lot of balls in play against this specific team, especially Michaelis on the mound. The hope is maybe Sunday is the way that you do that, in part because Sonny Gray's on the mound.
That's
more swing and miss stuff. So it allows for you to put Burleson in right field because there are hopefully at least going to be fewer balls put into play against Gray than there would be against like Miles Michaelis tonight, for example. Should be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. By the time that we talk to you guys next, they will also have played one game against the Baltimore Orioles, so we'll have plenty to break down when we get back with you guys on Tuesday. For Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. I'll speak for Alex Ferrario as well. Thank you guys so much for everything that you've done for us. You make what we do possible. We wouldn't be here if not for all of you guys listening on a day-to-day basis. Enjoy yourself this weekend. Be safe out there for Memorial Day. Call an Uber if you need one. Have fun, though. We'll talk to you guys on Tuesday at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's taking care of you guys next year on 101 ESPN.